After 3 grueling deployments to Afghanistan, Maya Rivera returns home to Colorado with unhealed emotional wounds and PTSD flashbacks that prevent her from returning to normal life. At a secluded ranch near an abandoned border outpost, where therapy for veterans is conducted using wild mustangs, Maya unexpectedly forms a special bond with a copper stallion named Phantom, who carries his own scars. Nighttime excursions to the mysterious border outpost lead Maya to uncover government secrets buried for decades beneath the desert sand, and to discover an amazing connection between her own history and this forgotten place. What Maya and Phantom awaken in this isolated corner of the desert goes beyond ordinary understanding. A brief pause before we begin. Write in the comments where you're listening to our stories from. Subscribe to our channel. It's free and you can always change your mind. Enjoy the story. The nightmares always ended the same way, with sand in her mouth and blood on her hands. But this time, as Maya Rivera jolted awake in her cabin on the outskirts of Grand Junction, Colorado, something was different. 3 months home from Afghanistan, and still the sounds of war followed her. Except the sound cutting through the pre-dawn silence wasn't gunfire. It was the distant whinny of a horse where no horse should be. Through her window, silhouetted against the purple Rocky Mountain horizon, a copper-colored Mustang stood perfectly still, staring directly at her, as if it had come specifically to deliver a message. Maya rubbed her eyes, certain the horse was another apparition, like the phantom soldiers that sometimes gathered at the foot of her bed. But when she blinked, the Mustang remained. Maya slipped out of bed, her dog tags clinking softly against her chest as she moved. The wooden floor felt cold beneath her bare feet. At 32, her body carried the wear of 3 combat tours as an Army combat medic. A stiff knee from a helicopter crash, and scars from shrapnel along her right forearm. The physical wounds had healed. It was the invisible ones that kept her isolated in this cabin, miles from town. The horse outside nickered again, pawing at the ground. "What the hell?" Maya whispered, pulling on jeans and a flannel shirt. She grabbed her flashlight from the bedside table, though the approaching dawn was already painting the sky in watercolor strokes of orange and pink. When she stepped onto the porch, the cold April air bit at her cheeks. The Mustang was still there, about 50 yards from her cabin. Now that she could see it clearly, Maya noticed the white star-shaped marking on its forehead and the way it held one front leg gingerly off the ground. "Hey there," she called softly, carefully descending the porch steps. "Where'd you come from, buddy?" The horse's ears pricked forward at her voice, but it didn't bolt. Instead, it watched her with intelligent eyes that seemed to hold a question. Maya had grown up around horses. Her grandfather's ranch in New Mexico had been her summer haven throughout childhood, but she hadn't been close to one since before her first deployment 5 years ago. Something about this Mustang stirred memories from before the war, from before the nightmares. As she approached, moving slowly to avoid startling the animal, she noticed more details. This wasn't someone's escaped pet. The Mustang had the lean, weathered look of a wild horse, and it bore scars. A long, jagged line ran across its flank, and there were marks around its legs that looked like wounds from barbed wire. "You've been through something, haven't you?" Maya murmured, stopping about 10 feet away. The horse snorted, shaking its copper mane. Maya had been back in Colorado for 3 months, ever since her medical discharge. 3 months of isolation, of jumping at sudden noises, of avoiding her family's calls because she couldn't bear to tell them that the Maya they knew hadn't come home, that she'd left parts of herself buried in the sand half a world away. Her therapist at the VA called it PTSD. Maya called it failure. She'd been trained to save lives, but in the end, she couldn't save everyone. The faces of those she'd lost visited her in dreams. The Mustang took a tentative step toward her, then winced visibly when it put weight on its injured leg. "Let me see that," Maya said, her medic's instincts kicking in. To her surprise, the horse allowed her to approach. Up close, she could see it was a stallion, probably around 7 years old. The injury to his leg wasn't fresh. The wound had closed but hadn't healed properly. Someone had tried to treat it. There were traces of salve around the edges. "Where's your home?" she wondered aloud, looking for any sign of a brand or tag. There was none. The stallion nudged her shoulder gently with his muzzle, his breath warm against her neck. Something stirred in Maya's chest, an emotion she hadn't felt in months. Connection. Her phone rang from inside the cabin, shattering the moment. The Mustang startled, backing away several steps, but didn't run. "It's okay," Maya said, then hurried back inside to grab her phone. It was Dr. Brenner from the VA hospital in Grand Junction. "Maya, I've been trying to reach you for days," the doctor said when Maya answered. You missed your last 2 appointments. Maya leaned against the doorframe, watching the Mustang through the window. Sorry, I've been busy. I have a proposition for you, Doctor. Brenner continued, not acknowledging the obvious lie. There's a new therapy program starting at a ranch near the old Fort Collins Outpost. It's for veterans working with rescued Mustangs. I think it could be good for you. Maya's gaze fixed on the wild horse outside her window. Mustangs? Wild horses rescued from government roundups. The program pairs them with veterans. The idea is that healing happens in both directions. There was a pause. Maya, you need something. Being alone in that cabin isn't working. The Mustang outside pawed at the ground again, as if emphasizing the doctor's point. The program starts next week, Doctor. Brenner continued. I've already put your name on the list. It's called Unbroken Spirit Ranch. Just give it a chance. After hanging up, Maya returned to the porch. The synchronicity was too strange to be coincidence. A wild Mustang appearing at her cabin the same morning her therapist called about a Mustang therapy program. But the horse was gone. Where it had stood, there were only hoof prints in the soft earth. Maya felt an inexplicable sense of loss, as if something important had slipped through her fingers. She glanced down at her hands, steady hands that had once stitched wounds under gunfire, hands that now trembled when she heard a car backfire in town. She went back inside and pulled up her laptop, searching for Unbroken Spirit Ranch. The website showed a sprawling property near an old military border outpost that had been decommissioned after World War II. The ranch specialized in rescuing Mustangs from Bureau of Land Management roundups and rehabilitating them with the help of veterans. One photo in particular caught her eye. A copper-colored stallion with a white star on its forehead. The caption read, "Phantom recently rescued near the southern Colorado border. Still too wild for close human contact." Maya looked back out the window at the empty space where the Mustang had stood. Had she imagined it? Was her mind finally breaking down completely? She printed the directions to the ranch and placed them on her kitchen table, then spent the rest of the day in a daze, replaying the morning's encounter in her mind. That night, for the first time in months, she didn't dream of Afghanistan. Instead, she dreamed of running with wild horses across an endless plain, the sound of hoofbeats replacing the echo of gunfire in her mind. When she woke the next morning, she had made her decision. She packed a bag, locked up the cabin, and loaded her old Jeep Cherokee. The drive to Unbroken Spirit Ranch would take about 4 hours south, toward the New Mexico border. As Maya pulled away from her cabin, she glanced in her rearview mirror. For a moment, she thought she saw a flash of copper among the trees, a wild Mustang watching her leave. But when she blinked, there was nothing there but shadow and sunlight filtering through the pines. She didn't know it yet, but the Mustang that had visited her was indeed Phantom. And he was about to change her life in ways she could never have imagined. What waited for her at the abandoned border outpost wasn't just a therapy program. It was a mystery that would force her to confront both her past and her future. A journey that would either break her completely or finally begin to make her whole again. Maya turned onto the highway heading south. For the first time since returning home, she felt something pulling her forward instead of backward. A thin thread of purpose in a life that had lost its meaning. She followed it like a lifeline in the dark. The GPS announced Maya's arrival at Unbroken Spirit Ranch with mechanical certainty, but the rutted dirt road stretching before her told a different story. She'd been driving for nearly 15 minutes since turning off the highway, dust clouding behind her Jeep as she navigated between scrubby juniper trees and rock formations that jutted from the earth like ancient bones. "This can't be right," she muttered, checking her phone again. No service. The April sun beat down through her windshield, the high desert already warming despite the early hour. Just as she considered turning back, the road crested a hill and the valley below opened up before her. A sprawling ranch spread across the basin, several wooden buildings clustered together, surrounded by paddocks and corrals. Beyond them, the remains of what had to be the old Fort Collins outpost stood like a sentinel against the backdrop of distant mountains. Stone walls and a watchtower, half reclaimed by nature. Maya's hands tightened on the steering wheel as she drove down toward the ranch. A wooden sign at the entrance read, "Unbroken Spirit Ranch," in hand-carved letters. Below it, smaller text, "Where healing runs wild." She parked beside 3 other vehicles in a gravel lot and sat for a moment, suddenly uncertain. The familiar tightness gripped her chest, the same feeling that overwhelmed her in crowded places or when meeting new people. 3 months of isolation had only made her social anxiety worse. Just get out of the car, she told herself. using the commanding voice she'd once reserved for crisis situations in the field. One foot in front of the other. As she stepped out, the dry air filled her lungs. It was different from the thin mountain air of her cabin, warmer, scented with sage and dust. The sound of nickering horses came from somewhere beyond the main building. A tall woman with silver-streaked black hair, pulled into a braid, emerged from the largest structure. She wore faded jeans, boots, and a denim shirt with the sleeves rolled up. Deep lines etched her sun-weathered face, but her eyes were bright and evaluating as she approached. "You must be Maya Rivera," she said, extending a calloused hand. "I'm Elena Blackwood. Welcome to my ranch." Maya shook her hand, noting the strength in Elena's grip. "Thanks for having me. It's been a while since I've been around horses." "That's true for most who come here," Elena replied. "The horses don't mind. They've been through their own traumas." She gestured toward the main building. "Let's get you settled, then I'll introduce you to the herd and the other participants." Inside, the ranch house was surprisingly cool, with high ceilings and simple furnishings. A large common area featured comfortable-looking couches, a stone fireplace, and a long dining table. Photos of horses and veterans covered one wall. "You'll have a private room," Elena explained, leading Maya down a hallway. "We found that most veterans need their own space, at least at first." The room was small but comfortable, a twin bed with a colorful quilt, a dresser, and a window overlooking the corrals. Maya set her duffel bag on the bed, feeling strangely like she was reporting for duty. "The program runs for 6 weeks," Elena said from the doorway. "You're free to leave any time, but I hope you'll give it at least 2 weeks before making that decision. Change doesn't happen overnight, especially not with wild things." There was something knowing in her gaze that made Maya wonder if she was referring to the horses or the veterans. "I'll try," Maya said, the words feeling inadequate. In truth, she hadn't planned beyond getting here. The strangeness of her morning visitor had propelled her forward without much thought. "That's all anyone can ask," Elena replied. Come out when you're ready. The others are gathering for lunch, and afterward, we'll introduce you to the horses." Alone in the room, Maya unpacked her few belongings, wondering what she had gotten herself into. She caught her reflection in the small mirror above the dresser, a woman she barely recognized anymore. Her once vibrant brown eyes now seemed dull, shadows beneath them from too many sleepless nights. Her dark hair was pulled back in a hasty ponytail, and her olive skin had lost its warmth, turning sallow from months of hiding indoors. 3 tours in Afghanistan had changed her in ways that went beyond the physical scars. The confident medic who had once thrived under pressure had been replaced by someone who struggled to make it through a day without panic attacks or flashbacks. With a deep breath, Maya straightened her shoulders, a soldier's posture ingrained from years of service, and headed toward the common area. 4 other people were seated around the dining table, 3 men and 1 woman. They glanced up as Maya entered, and she fought the urge to retreat. "Everyone, this is Maya Rivera, our newest participant," Elena said, gesturing for Maya to join them. "Maya, meet the others." The introductions washed over her. James, a former Marine with a prosthetic leg. Darius, an Air Force veteran whose hands shook slightly as he offered a wave. Layla, who sat with the perfect posture of someone who'd spent time in the Army. And Marcus, who spoke so softly Maya had to strain to hear him. "Welcome to the island of misfit toys," James said with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Pull up a chair." The lunch was simple, sandwiches, fruit, and iced tea, but Maya found she had little appetite. She picked at her food while the others made polite conversation, asking her basic questions about Colorado and her drive down. No one asked about her service or why she was here, and she was grateful for that unspoken courtesy. After lunch, Elena led them outside toward the corrals. "The horses you'll be working with have their own histories," she explained as they walked. "Some were rounded up by the Bureau of Land Management when their herds grew too large for the land to sustain. Others were abandoned or abused by previous owners. All of them have had to learn to trust again, just like many of you." The paddocks contained about a dozen horses of various colors and sizes. Some approached the fence curiously as the group walked by, while others kept their distance, watching warily. "You won't choose your horse," Elena continued. "They'll choose you. Today we'll just spend time in the corral together. No expectations, no pressure. Just presence." They entered a large round pen where 5 horses roamed freely. Maya scanned them immediately, looking for the copper stallion with the white star, but didn't see him. "Where's Phantom?" she asked before she could stop herself. Elena gave her a sharp look. "You know about Phantom?" "I saw him on your website," Maya said quickly, not wanting to explain her bizarre morning visitor. The Mustang with the star marking. Phantom is special, Elena said carefully. He's not ready for this program yet. He was only brought in 2 weeks ago, and he's still too wild. We're keeping him in the north paddock, away from the others. The disappointment Maya felt was surprisingly strong. Each horse has its own timeline, Elena continued, just like each person does. You'll work with one of these 5 for now. For the next hour, they simply stood or sat in the corral, letting the horses become accustomed to their presence. Maya found a spot along the fence and slid down to sit in the dirt, her back against a post. She watched as the others tried different approaches. Layla stood perfectly still in the center, while James softly talked to a chestnut mare who seemed curious about him. None of the horses approached Maya. She wasn't surprised. She felt empty, hollowed out. What did she have to offer any living thing when she could barely take care of herself? As the afternoon session ended, Elena approached her. It takes time, she said, offering a hand to help Maya up. Trust isn't built in a day. I'm not sure I'm cut out for this, Maya admitted. That's what they all say on the first day. Elena looked toward the northern edge of the property. Take a walk if you need to clear your head. Just stay within the ranch boundaries. We're close to BLM land, and it's easy to get lost out there. After dinner, Maya did just that. As the others gathered in the common room, she slipped out, needing space from the constant effort of being around people. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant orange and purple. She followed a path that wound around the paddocks, breathing in the cooling air. Without consciously choosing her direction, she found herself drawn northward toward the edge of the property. A separate paddock stood in the distance, partially hidden by a stand of juniper trees. Something pulled her forward, that same inexplicable thread she'd felt that morning. As she drew closer, she saw him, the copper Mustang with the white star, pacing restlessly along the fence line. Phantom. Even from a distance, she could see that his movements were uneven, his injured leg causing him to limp slightly. She approached slowly, not wanting to startle him. When she was about 20 feet away, Phantom stopped pacing and turned to face her, ears pricked forward. Hey there, Maya said softly. Remember me? The Mustang nickered softly as if in recognition. That's impossible, she whispered to herself. You couldn't have been at my cabin. That's 4 hours away. Yet something in the horse's intelligent gaze made her doubt her own rationality. The connection she felt was too strong to dismiss. She moved closer to the fence, and to her surprise, Phantom approached as well, stopping just a few feet away. In the fading light, she could see the scars on his flank more clearly, long, ragged marks that spoke of violence and survival. What happened to you? She murmured. He was found caught in barbed wire near the old border outpost, a voice said behind her. Maya spun around to find a man she hadn't met before. He was in his 60s with deep tan skin and long gray hair pulled back in a ponytail. His weathered face suggested decades under the southwestern sun. Sorry, didn't mean to startle you, he said, holding up his hands briefly. I'm Joe Begay. I work with the horses here. I'm Maya. I just arrived today. Joe nodded, looking past her to Phantom. He doesn't usually let people get this close. Been keeping everyone at a distance since we found him. Where exactly was he found? Maya asked, turning back to the Mustang, who continued to watch them with alert eyes. About 5 miles from here, near the ruins of the old Fort Collins Outpost, Joe replied. There's an old border patrol station there from back when they were monitoring that stretch. Been abandoned for decades. Phantom was tangled in old wire, half-starved. Elena's daughter found him while out riding. The border outpost, Maya repeated, feeling a strange sense of déjà vu. What was it used for? Joe shrugged. Monitoring crossings, I suppose. It's been empty since before I was born. Local kids think it's haunted. As the darkness deepened, Phantom began to fade into shadow. Only the white star on his forehead still visible in the gathering twilight. We should head back, Joe said. Not good to be out here after dark. Coyotes get active, and the Mustangs get nervous. As they walked back toward the ranch house, Maya felt the weight of Joe's curious gaze. You've met him before, Joe said. It wasn't a question. Maya hesitated. I don't see how that's possible. Stranger things have happened out here, Joe replied. The old ones say this land has memory. The horses especially. They know things. A chill ran through Maya despite the mild evening. Get some rest, Joe said as they reached the main building. Tomorrow's when the real work begins. That night, Maya dreamed of running, not from something, but towards something. In her dream, she rode Phantom across the desert, the abandoned border outpost rising before them like a mirage. As they approached, she saw figures waiting in the shadows of the watchtower. The faces of her fallen comrades, the patients she couldn't save, all watching her approach. She woke with a start, heart pounding. The digital clock on her nightstand read 2:17 a.m. Outside her window, the desert was silent and still under the light of a quarter moon. Except, she could have sworn she heard a horse whinnying in the distance. Maya slipped out of bed and moved to the window. In the silvery moonlight, she could make out the shapes of the corrals and buildings. At the northern edge of the property, a shadow moved. A copper-colored horse galloping along the fence line, as if searching for a way out. Phantom was trying to escape. Without stopping to analyze her actions, Maya pulled on her jeans and boots and slipped quietly from her room. Whatever connection existed between her and that Mustang, it was drawing her forward into the night and toward whatever secrets waited at the abandoned border outpost. The night air wrapped around Maya like a living thing as she moved silently across the ranch property. The skills that had kept her alive in Afghanistan served her well now. Moving without sound, staying in shadows, reading the terrain ahead. Her combat boots barely disturbed the desert soil as she made her way toward the northern paddock. The moon cast everything in silver and shadow. Above, stars crowded the sky in numbers that still shocked her, even after months back in the States. In the war zone, she'd rarely looked up. The sky was where death came from. Helicopters, drones, artillery. But here, the vastness above her felt like a roadmap to possibility rather than danger. As she neared Phantom's enclosure, she slowed her pace. The copper Mustang was no longer running the fence line. Instead, he stood motionless in the center of the paddock, head raised, as if listening to something only he could hear. "Hey," Maya whispered, approaching the fence. "What's going on with you?" Phantom's ears flicked toward her voice, but his attention remained fixed on something beyond the ranch, toward the east, where the old border outpost presumably stood. The hairs on Maya's arms rose. Something felt off. Not dangerous exactly, but significant, like the charged air before a thunderstorm. A soft crunching sound behind her made her spin around, dropping instinctively into a defensive crouch. "Easy there, soldier," came Joe Begay's quiet voice. "Just me." Maya straightened, her heart hammering. "Sorry. Habit." "Good habits," Joe said, coming to stand beside her at the fence. He wore the same clothes as earlier, making her wonder if he'd even been to bed. "Keep you alive." They both watched Phantom, who still hadn't moved, his attention fixed on the distant darkness. "He's been like this for 3 nights now," Joe said. "Always at the same time. Always looking east." "Toward the outpost," Maya said. Joe nodded. "Something's calling him." Maya glanced at the older man. In the moonlight, his weathered face seemed to belong to the landscape itself, as timeless as the surrounding rocks and scrubland. "You believe that?" "I believe horses know things we've forgotten," he replied. "The Navajos say they carry messages between worlds, between the living and the dead." A chill crawled up Maya's spine that had nothing to do with the night air. "I don't believe in ghosts." Joe's smile was barely visible in the darkness. "Yet here you are following one in the middle of the night." Before Maya could respond, Phantom suddenly moved. With a soft whicker, he trotted to the fence where they stood, his dark eyes reflecting starlight fixed on Maya's face. "He wants out," Joe said simply. "To go where?" "To the outpost. To finish whatever business brought him here." Joe was already moving toward the gate. "And he wants you to go with him." "That's crazy," Maya protested, but her feet carried her after Joe without hesitation. "Probably," he agreed, pulling a lead rope from his pocket. "But sometimes crazy is the only path forward." "Elena won't like this." "Elena doesn't need to know." Joe unlatched the gate. "Sometimes healing happens outside the program." Maya should have argued, should have returned to her room and forgotten this strange midnight encounter. But something deeper than conscious thought propelled her forward. The same instinct that had guided her through smoke and chaos to find wounded soldiers, to know which ones could be saved and which were already beyond help. Joe handed her the lead rope. He won't let me approach him. It has to be you." Maya took the rope, its rough fibers familiar against her palm. She stepped into the paddock, moving slowly toward the Mustang, who watched her advance with alert attention. "Hey, Phantom," she said softly. "Remember me?" The stallion didn't retreat as she approached. When she was an arm's length away, he stretched out his neck, nostrils flaring as he caught her scent. Carefully, so carefully, she raised her hand. Phantom flinched but didn't back away. His muscles trembled beneath his copper coat as her fingertips made contact with his neck. "That's it," she whispered. "We've both survived worse than this, haven't we?" The Mustang released a long breath, warm air brushing her arm. It felt like surrender, or perhaps recognition. With slow movements, Maya slipped the lead rope around his neck, loose enough not to frighten him but secure enough to guide him. To her amazement, he allowed it. Well, I'll be damned, Joe murmured from the gate. 3 people have tried to get a rope on him this week. He nearly kicked Elena's nephew through the fence. Maya didn't respond, too focused on maintaining the tenuous connection with the wild creature before her. She led him toward the gate, expecting him to balk, but Phantom followed willingly. Outside the paddock, Joe handed her a small flashlight. Stay on the eastern trail. It'll take you straight to the outpost. About 2 miles. I'd go with you, but... He tapped his left knee, which Maya now noticed caused a slight hitch in his stride. Old war injury. Can't walk that far anymore. You're letting me take him alone? What if he bolts? He won't. Joe's certainty was absolute. He's been waiting for you. You don't even know me. I know enough. Joe stepped back. Be back by dawn. Elena does her rounds at first light. Maya hesitated. The rational part of her mind screamed that this was madness. Following a strange old man's instructions, taking a half-wild horse into the desert at night to visit abandoned ruins. But beneath that voice was a deeper current pulling her forward. The same current that had drawn her to this place after seeing Phantom at her cabin. There's a canteen in the saddlebag, Joe added, pointing to a small leather pouch he'd attached to the lead rope. And a first aid kit. Just in case. In case of what? Maya asked. Joe didn't answer. Instead, he looked toward the eastern horizon. Some wounds can only be healed where they were made. True for horses. True for people too. With those cryptic words hanging in the air, he turned and melted into the shadows, leaving Maya alone with Phantom under the vast starry sky. Well, she said to the Mustang, I guess it's just you and me now. Phantom nickered softly, then turned east, pulling gently on the lead rope. Maya switched on the flashlight, illuminating a narrow trail that wound through the scrubby vegetation. All right then, lead the way. Their journey through the night desert became a strange meditation. The soft sound of Phantom's hooves on the sandy soil, the whisper of wind through juniper and sage, the occasional call of a night bird, all of it wove together into a rhythm that seemed to sync with her heartbeat. For the first time since returning from Afghanistan, Maya felt present in her body, anchored in the moment rather than trapped between traumatic past and uncertain future. Phantom moved with purpose, his injured legs seeming to trouble him less as they progressed. The trail climbed gradually, winding around rock formations and dry arroyos. Maya's military training kept her oriented, noting landmarks, tracking their direction by the stars. But she sensed that even without these skills, Phantom would have guided them true. After about 40 minutes of walking, they crested a ridge, and Maya stopped short. Below them, bathed in moonlight, stood the ruins of the border outpost. It was larger than she'd expected. A compound of stone buildings surrounding a central courtyard, with a watchtower rising at its eastern corner. Though abandoned for decades, much of it remained intact, protected from decay by the dry desert air. Phantom whickered, the sound echoing in the night stillness. He pulled forward on the lead rope with new urgency. Okay, Maya murmured. We're going. They descended the ridge, the outpost growing larger as they approached. In the moonlight, it looked both solid and spectral, its empty windows like vacant eyes watching their advance. Yellow police tape, faded and tattered, still clung to parts of the perimeter fence, suggesting that whatever had happened here had triggered an official investigation. Near the main gate, Phantom suddenly halted, his ears pinned back, nostrils flaring with agitation. What is it? Maya asked, scanning the area. Her combat instincts kicked in, searching for threats, pathways, cover. The gate hung partially open, its hinges rusted. Beyond it, the courtyard was visible, empty except for tumbleweeds and debris. Phantom pawed at the ground, his hoof striking something half buried in the dirt. Maya directed her flashlight beam downward. Barbed wire, old and rusted but still deadly sharp, protruded from the soil. Looking more carefully, she could see strands of it partially buried along the perimeter, as if someone had tried to create a makeshift barrier and then abandoned the effort. Is this what hurt you? She asked softly, kneeling to examine the cruel metal. Phantom shifted nervously but didn't pull away. This is what caught you? The Mustang's scars suddenly made more sense. He must have become entangled in this wire, either accidentally or deliberately trapped by someone. The thought ignited a slow burn of anger in Maya's chest. Carefully, she began clearing the wire, rolling it up and moving it well away from the path. The task was methodical, requiring full concentration, the perfect antidote to anxiety. When the way was clear, she straightened, wiping dust from her hands. Better now? She asked. Phantom snorted, then stepped forward through the gate, seemingly more at ease. Maya followed, the hairs on the back of her neck rising as they entered the compound. The air felt different here, heavier, charged with something she couldn't name. The courtyard opened before them, larger than it had appeared from outside. Wooden posts that must once have been hitching rails still stood at intervals around the perimeter. The stone buildings, barracks perhaps, or offices, formed a U-shape around the yard, with the watchtower completing the square at the far end. Phantom moved with certainty toward the largest building on the right side of the courtyard. Its wooden door hung askew on leather hinges, revealing darkness beyond. The Mustang stopped at the threshold, pawing at the ground again. Maya hesitated. Every instinct honed by war urged caution. Unknown spaces meant potential danger. Ambushes, IEDs, snipers. She sweated despite the cool night air, her heart rate accelerating. Phantom turned his head to look at her, the white star on his forehead gleaming in the moonlight. There was an intelligence in his gaze that transcended animal awareness, a knowing that called to something equally deep in Maya. "Okay," she whispered. "I trust you." She stepped forward, shining her flashlight into the building. It appeared to have been some kind of administrative office. Dust-covered desks still stood against the walls, and filing cabinets, some with drawers hanging open, lined the far wall. Papers littered the floor, turned yellow with age. Phantom followed her inside, his hooves loud on the wooden floorboards. He moved to the center of the room and stopped, as if waiting. Maya swept her flashlight around, trying to understand what had drawn the Mustang here. Nothing seemed extraordinary, just the abandoned detritus of a border outpost long forgotten by the government that had built it. A glint of reflection caught her eye, something metallic on the floor near the largest desk. She moved closer, bending to examine it. Dog tags. Military issue, but old. Not the style used during her service. She picked them up, brushing away decades of dust to read the engraved information. Rivera Miguel A. Catholic O positive. The sight of her own surname etched in the metal sent a jolt through Maya's system. Her hands began to tremble as she turned the tags over. On the back, something had been crudely scratched into the metal. Nunca olvides. Never forget. What the hell? She whispered. Phantom whickered softly, moving closer to nudge her shoulder with his muzzle. Maya's mind raced. Rivera was a common enough surname, but the coincidence seemed too great. She knew her grandfather had been stationed somewhere in the Southwest during his military service, before she was born. Could he have been here? At this outpost? The thought disoriented her. She joined the army partly because of her grandfather's stories, tales of brotherhood and purpose that had shaped her childhood understanding of service. But he'd never mentioned this place. She tucked the dog tags into her pocket, suddenly eager to explore further. The flashlight beam revealed a doorway at the back of the office, leading deeper into the building. Phantom followed as she moved toward it, the lead rope slack between them. The next room had been a communications center. Ancient radio equipment sat on counters along one wall, their dials frozen in time. A large map of the border region covered another wall, faded pins still marking locations of interest. But it was the cork bulletin board beside the map that captured Maya's attention. Yellowed photographs were pinned to it, group shots of soldiers in 1950s-era uniforms, standing at attention before the outpost's gates or casually grouped around military vehicles. Her flashlight beam moved slowly across the faces until it stopped on one that sent another shockwave through her system. A young man with her own eyes stared back at her, high cheekbones, strong jaw, and the distinctive Rivera family gaze that her mother always said could see right through nonsense. Beneath the photo, a handwritten label, Corporal Miguel Rivera, 1957. Abuelo, Maya whispered, using the name she'd called her grandfather throughout childhood. Phantom snorted, pawing at the floorboards directly beneath the bulletin board. Maya knelt, shining her light on the spot. The wooden plank looked slightly different from those surrounding it. Newer, less weathered. She pressed on it, and to her surprise, it moved, revealing a small space beneath. Heart pounding, she lifted the board completely. In the hollow beneath was a metal box, roughly the size of a hardcover book. She lifted it out, setting it on the nearest surface. A dust-covered desk. The box wasn't locked. Inside, she found a leather-bound journal, its pages brittle with age. Along with it was a folded piece of paper, a tarnished silver medallion on a chain, and several more photographs. Maya opened the journal with careful fingers, angling her flashlight to read the faded handwriting on the first page. Property of CPL, Miguel A. Rivera, Fort Collins Border Outpost, 1957-1958. Below that, a single sentence that made her blood run cold. What we found here must never be forgotten. A sudden gust of wind blew through the broken windows, sending papers scattering across the floor. Phantom startled, backing up several steps, his ears pinning flat against his head. "It's okay," Maya said, her voice sounding strange in the empty building. "Just the wind." But even as she said it, she felt the weight of unseen presence, as if the walls themselves were watching, waiting to see what she would do with what she'd found. She slipped the journal into the saddlebag Joe had provided, along with the other contents of the box. Whatever secrets her grandfather had left here, they weren't meant to be examined in this haunted place in the middle of the night. "Let's go," she told Phantom, suddenly eager to be back under the open sky. The Mustang needed no encouragement. He moved quickly toward the exit, Maya following close behind. But as they reached the doorway, a sound stopped them both. The unmistakable clink of metal against stone, coming from the courtyard outside. Maya froze, her combat instinct surging to the surface. She switched off her flashlight, plunging them into darkness broken only by strips of moonlight through the broken windows. Phantom stood statue still beside her, as if he too sensed danger. Another sound, a footstep, too deliberate to be an animal. Someone else was in the outpost. Maya's mind raced through possibilities. Joe coming to check on them. Elena discovering their absence? Or someone else entirely? Moving silently to the window, she peered out into the courtyard. A figure moved through the shadows near the watchtower, too far away to identify clearly, but definitely human. "Stay here," she whispered to Phantom, though she knew the command was probably meaningless to the horse. Still, he remained motionless as she eased toward the door, every sense heightened by adrenaline. Years of combat training guided her movements, keeping to shadows, maintaining cover, controlling her breathing. She slipped out of the building and pressed her back against the exterior wall, listening. Footsteps approached from the direction of the watchtower, unhurried but purposeful. Then a flashlight beam swept across the courtyard, briefly illuminating the building's opposite Maya's position. She had two choices: retreat into the building with Phantom or confront whoever was out there. The military discipline ingrained in her pushed for the tactical retreat, avoid unnecessary confrontation when outnumbered or in unknown territory. But something else, something that felt connected to the dog tags in her pocket, in the journal in the saddlebag, urged her forward. Taking a deep breath, Maya stepped away from the wall, deliberately placing herself in the open courtyard where the approaching light would find her. "Who's there?" she called, her voice steady despite the hammering of her heart. The flashlight beam swung toward her, momentarily blinding her. She raised a hand to shield her eyes, holding her ground. "Maya?" a familiar voice responded. "What the hell are you doing out here?" The light lowered, and Maya blinked, her vision slowly returning. Standing before her was Layla, the female Army veteran she'd met briefly during lunch. In the moonlight, her expression was a mixture of surprise and suspicion. "I could ask you the same thing," Maya replied, tension unwinding slightly in her shoulders. Layla approached, stopping a few feet away. She wore dark clothing and carried a backpack over one shoulder. Couldn't sleep. I come out here sometimes. In the middle of the night. 2 miles from the ranch," a shrug. "The quiet helps. No one bothers me here." Her eyes narrowed. "How did you even know about this place?" "You just arrived today." Before Maya could formulate a response, a soft nickering came from the doorway behind her. Phantom emerged from the shadows, the lead rope dragging on the ground behind him. Layla's eyes widened. "Is that Phantom? How did you get him out of the paddock?" "No one's been able to handle him." The truth seemed too complicated to explain. "It's a long story." "I'll bet." Layla's gaze traveled from the Mustang to Maya and back again. "Elena's going to lose her mind when she finds out." "If she finds out," Maya countered, an edge entering her voice, "what exactly are you doing out here that you don't want anyone to know about?" A tense silence stretched between them. In her peripheral vision, Maya assessed potential cover, escape routes, defensive positions, automatic calculations that had kept her alive in war zones. Finally, Layla's posture relaxed slightly. "Fair enough. We all have our reasons," she gestured toward Phantom. "But that's unusual. That horse hasn't let anyone near him since they brought him in." Maya moved to Phantom's side, picking up the trailing lead rope. "We have something in common, I guess." "The scars?" Layla asked with surprising directness. Maya nodded, her free hand unconsciously moving to her forearm, where shrapnel had left its permanent marks. "Yeah." Layla's hand touched her own neck, where Maya now noticed a thin white line disappearing beneath her collar. "Don't we all?" Another silence fell, this one less threatening. The moonlight bathed the abandoned outpost in silver, softening its hard edges in deep shadows. For the first time, Maya noticed details beyond the tactical. The way desert plants had begun reclaiming the edges of the buildings, tiny flowers blooming even in this harsh environment. Life persisting despite everything. I found something, Maya said suddenly, surprising herself with the admission. Something that might have belonged to my grandfather. He was stationed here in the 50s. Layla's expression shifted to genuine interest. In this outpost? That's some coincidence. Yeah, Maya touched the pocket where the dog tags rested. Too much of one to ignore. What did you find? Maya hesitated, unsure how much to reveal to this woman she barely knew. But something in Layla's direct gaze, the look of someone who had seen too much to bother with pretense, encouraged honesty. A journal, some photographs, dog tags with my family name. Layla nodded slowly. This place has secrets. I felt it the first time I came out here. She glanced toward the watchtower. That's why I keep coming back. Something happened here that nobody talks about. What do you mean? The official story is that this was just a standard border outpost, decommissioned when they built the newer facilities closer to the main roads. Layla adjusted her backpack. But if you look closely enough, you can see that's not the whole truth. The reinforced foundations, the underground level that's been sealed off. This wasn't just about monitoring border crossings. Maya recalled the journal's cryptic first entry. What we found here must never be forgotten. Have you been inside the watchtower? Tried. The door's been welded shut from the inside. Layla checked her watch. Quintana, we should head back soon. Dawn's less than 2 hours away. Maya nodded, though part of her was reluctant to leave. The connection between her grandfather, this place, and somehow Phantom himself felt significant. A puzzle she was just beginning to piece together. Tomorrow night, Layla said, as if reading her thoughts. Meet me in the common room at midnight. Bring whatever you found. Maybe we can figure it out together. Why would you help me? Layla's smile held no humor. Because I've been coming here for 3 weeks and found nothing. Maybe you're the key that unlocks whatever's hidden here. She glanced at Phantom. Or maybe he is. As they prepared to leave, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Not by anything physical. The outpost was clearly abandoned, but by something less tangible. The weight of history, perhaps. Or the echoes of whatever had transpired here decades ago. She thought of her grandfather. Had he felt the same presence? Had he walked these same stones under the same stars, carrying secrets that would eventually find their way to her? Phantom nudged her shoulder gently, as if urging her back to the present moment. His dark eyes reflected constellations, ancient light that had traveled millions of years to reach them. Let's go home, Maya whispered, and together they turned toward the path that would lead them back to the ranch, leaving the silent outpost to guard its mysteries for one more night. Dawn was breaking as Maya and Phantom approached the ranch, the eastern sky painted in watercolor strokes of pink and gold. They'd walked in companionable silence, Phantom seemingly as lost in thought as Maya herself. The Mustang moved more freely now, his injured leg barely noticeable in his gait. Joe Begay waited by the northern paddock, his silhouette unmistakable against the brightening horizon. As they drew closer, Maya could see the relief in his weathered face. Was beginning to worry, he said, his voice carrying in the still morning air. We ran into someone else out there, Maya explained as they reached him. Another veteran from the program. Layla. Joe's expression shifted subtly. The army woman. She goes out there often. You knew. Not much happens around here I don't know about. He held the gate open as Maya led Phantom back into the paddock. The Mustang went willingly, though he paused to press his muzzle against Maya's shoulder before moving away. Once the gate was secured, Joe gave her an appraising look. You found something? It wasn't a question. Maya touched the saddlebag where her grandfather's journal rested. How did you know? The outpost doesn't let people leave empty-handed. Joe's gaze drifted toward the distant horizon. Everyone finds what they need to find there. That doesn't make any sense. His smile was enigmatic. Not everything has to make sense to be true. He nodded toward the ranch house where lights were beginning to come on. Better get back to your room before Elena starts her rounds. And Maya, he hesitated. Be careful who you trust with whatever you found. Some secrets are best kept buried. With that cryptic warning, he turned and walked away, leaving Maya staring after him, the weight of the journal and dog tags suddenly heavier in her hands. She made it back to her room without encountering anyone, slipping inside and closing the door just as she heard movement in the hallway beyond. Exhaustion hit her all at once, the adrenaline of the night's adventure draining away, leaving her limbs heavy and mind-foggy. She hid the journal and other items beneath her mattress, too tired to examine them properly now. Questions would have to wait. As she collapsed onto the bed, still fully clothed, her last conscious thought was of Phantom's intelligent eyes reflecting starlight, and the strange sense of purpose that had guided them both through the night. "You look like hell," James commented when Maya emerged for breakfast 3 hours later. The Marine veteran pushed a mug of coffee toward her as she sat at the communal table. "Thanks," she muttered, wrapping her hands around the warm ceramic. "Rough night?" he asked, his tone casual but eyes sharp. Maya shrugged, unwilling to elaborate. "Still adjusting." "Uh-huh." James clearly didn't believe her, but he didn't press further. Elena entered the room, clipboard in hand. "Good morning, everyone. We'll start with individual sessions today, then group work with the horses this afternoon." She consulted her notes. "Maya, you'll be first up. My office in 15 minutes?" It wasn't really a question. Maya nodded, gulping down her coffee and grabbing a piece of toast to eat on the way. Elena's office was the smallest room in the main building, a converted closet, really, with just enough space for a desk, 2 chairs, and a bookshelf crammed with texts on equine therapy and trauma recovery. Certificates and photographs covered the walls, including several showing Elena with military officers, suggesting connections beyond this remote ranch. "Sleep well?" Elena asked as Maya took a seat. "Well enough," Maya lied, fighting back a yawn. Elena's gaze was too knowing. "First night in a new place is always tough, especially for veterans." She settled behind her desk. "Tell me why you're here, Maya." The directness of the question caught Maya off guard. "My VA doctor recommended the program." "That's how you found us," Elena corrected. "Not why you're here." Maya fidgeted with the edge of her shirt, suddenly feeling exposed. "I'm not sure what you're asking. What are you hoping to gain? What does healing look like for you?" The question hit harder than Maya expected. What did healing look like? She'd never articulated it, even to herself. The absence of nightmares? The ability to be in crowds without scanning for threats? Or something deeper? A purpose to replace the ones she'd lost when her medical discharge had ended her military career? "I don't know," she admitted finally. "To feel normal again, I guess." Elena's expression softened slightly. Most people who come through that door say the same thing. But here's the truth. There's no going back to who you were before. Trauma changes you. The goal isn't to erase it, but to integrate it, to build something new from what remains. The words resonated uncomfortably. Maya had spent months trying to recapture her pre-war self, as if that person still existed somewhere beneath the layers of experience and pain. "The horses help with that," Elena continued. "They don't care who you were. They only respond to who you are right now in this moment. That kind of presence is healing." "Is that why you started this program?" A shadow crossed Elena's face. "Partly. My son was a Marine. 2 tours in Iraq. He came home different, like everyone does. The VA gave him pills that turned him into a zombie. The therapy groups didn't help. He found his own way of coping." She paused. It didn't end well. Maya absorbed this in silence. The personal cost behind Elena's professional mission suddenly clear. "The horses saved me afterward," Elena said. "I figured they might save others too." She straightened in her chair, visibly shaking off the moment of vulnerability. "This afternoon, you'll start working with one of the program horses. Not Phantom," she added, seeing Maya's expression. "He's not ready." "Actually," Maya began, then hesitated. The memory of Joe's warning echoed in her mind. "Be careful who you trust. I've worked with difficult horses before. Maybe I could try with him." Elena studied her with renewed interest. "You have experience with horses?" "My grandfather's ranch in New Mexico. Summers growing up." Elena made a note on her clipboard. We'll see. For now, I want you to work with Soldier. He's a bay gelding, former cavalry mount, wounded in a training accident and retired. He's good with new participants." Maya nodded, accepting the redirection even as her thoughts drifted to Phantom and their midnight journey. "One more thing," Elena said, her tone shifting. "The old border outpost east of here is off limits. It's structurally unsound and on federally protected land. We've had some issues with participants wandering out there. I'd hate to have to call search and rescue if someone got hurt or lost." The warning was delivered casually, but Maya caught the steel beneath it. Elena was watching her reaction carefully. "I didn't know there was an outpost nearby," Maya lied smoothly, her face betraying nothing. Years of military discipline had its uses. "Good. Let's keep it that way." Elena closed her folder. 10 minutes until your session with Dr. Harrison. He's our trauma specialist. Don't let the beard fool you. He knows his stuff." Dismissed, Maya made her way to the designated therapy room, her mind spinning. Elena's warning about the outpost had been direct and purposeful, almost as if she knew or suspected something. But how could she? Joe wouldn't have said anything, and Layla seemed equally invested in keeping their nighttime excursions secret. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of therapy sessions and orientation activities. By lunch, Maya was mentally exhausted from the effort of appearing engaged, while her thoughts continually circled back to her grandfather's journal hidden beneath her mattress. She picked at her food, barely registering the conversation around the table until she heard Phantom's name mentioned. "Strangest thing," Marcus was saying quietly. "Elena found the gate unlatched this morning. Said someone must have tried to release him." Maya kept her eyes on her plate, pulse quickening. "That Mustang's better off here than running wild," Darius replied. "Too many cattle ranchers around with trigger fingers. If someone could actually handle him, Elena might reconsider the too wild for the program stance," James added. "But after what happened with her nephew..." "What happened?" Maya asked, unable to contain her curiosity. James glanced around, then lowered his voice. "Kid's an experienced rider. Thought he could show off by being the first to break Phantom. Ended up with a concussion and broken collarbone when the horse sent him flying into a fence post." "Served him right," Layla said, speaking for the first time since sitting down. "You don't break a horse that's already been broken by the world." Her eyes met Maya's briefly, an unspoken acknowledgement passing between them. Midnight. Common room. Maya gave a slight nod. The afternoon brought her first direct interaction with the therapy horses. As promised, Elena paired her with Soldier, a steady bay gelding with gentle eyes and a white blaze down his face. Unlike the other participants who worked inside the round pen, Maya was instructed to simply walk Soldier around the perimeter of the larger paddock. "Connection before direction," the horse handler explained. "Just walk together, get to know each other's rhythms." It was peaceful work, requiring presence without demanding emotional exposure. Maya found herself relaxing as they circled the paddock, the simple repetition soothing her overactive mind. From the north paddock, she felt rather than saw Phantom watching her. When she allowed herself a glance in his direction, the copper Mustang stood at attention, tracking her movement with unnerving focus. "He's fascinated by you," said a voice behind her. Maya turned to find Joe Begay leaning on the fence rail, his dark eyes thoughtful. "Is that unusual?" she asked, continuing to walk Soldier in a slow circle. "For him? Very. He doesn't usually care about humans one way or another." Joe tipped his head toward the main ranch house. "Elena's been asking questions about last night. Gate left open. Hoof prints on the trail east." Maya's stomach tightened. "What did you tell her?" "Nothing to tell. I was in my cabin all night." His expression remained neutral, but there was a glint of amusement in his eyes. "Far as I know, horses sometimes get restless under a full moon. Gate might not have been properly latched." Maya nodded, grateful for his discretion. "Have you worked here long?" "Since Elena started the program." "Before that," he shrugged. "Military. Then various jobs that didn't stick." "You served?" "Vietnam. Long time ago now." His gaze turned distant. "Different war, same wounds." Maya understood the unspoken connection. The brotherhood of those who had seen things others couldn't comprehend. "That journal you found," Joe said, voice lowered. "Have you read it yet?" "Not yet. Might want to do that sooner rather than later." Joe straightened, his attention shifting to something beyond Maya's shoulder. "Company coming." Maya turned to see Elena approaching, clipboard still in hand. Joe nodded politely to both women and walked away, his slight limp more noticeable now that Maya knew to look for it. "How's it going with Soldier?" Elena asked, reaching out to stroke the gelding's neck. "Good. He's very patient. He's seen a lot. Understands more than most people give him credit for." Elena checked something off on her clipboard. "I wanted to let you know that your grandfather's name came up during our background check." Maya's heart skipped a beat. "My grandfather? Miguel Rivera. He was stationed at Fort Bliss in the 50s, wasn't he? We have a partnership with the VA and military archives for our research on veterans and horses." The casual way she delivered this information felt calculated. Maya kept her expression neutral, unwilling to reveal her confusion. Her grandfather had indeed served, but she'd never heard him mention Fort Bliss or any outpost near the Colorado-New Mexico border. "Yes, he was," Maya lied, deciding to play along. "Did you find something interesting in your research?" "Just connections. This region has a rich military history that most people don't know about." Elena's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Finish up with Soldier, then you're free until dinner. Group session afterward. Mandatory attendance." As Elena walked away, Maya felt a growing certainty that the ranch director knew more than she was sharing. Her grandfather's journal, hidden beneath the mattress in her room, suddenly seemed both a treasure and a potential threat. For the rest of the afternoon, Maya went through the motions of the program activities, her mind elsewhere. She found herself watching the other participants more carefully now. Who else might have secrets connected to this place? Layla, clearly. But what about the others? James, with his marine precision and watchful eyes. Darius, whose nervous energy seemed to mask something deeper. Marcus, who spoke barely above a whisper but missed nothing. Even Dr. Harrison, with his careful questions about her service and her family history. Were they all simply what they appeared to be? Wounded warriors seeking healing? Or was there something more at work in this remote ranch? By the time dinner ended and the group therapy session began, Maya was vibrating with impatience to return to her room and examine her grandfather's journal. The session dragged on interminably. Dr. Harrison guided them through a discussion about transition, from military to civilian life, from wounded to healing, from past to future. Under normal circumstances, Maya might have found it helpful. Tonight, she contributed the minimum necessary to avoid drawing attention. When they were finally dismissed at 9:30, Maya returned to her room, closed the door, and retrieved the journal from its hiding place. The leather binding felt warm in her hands, as if it contained not just words but energy, a connection to the past that transcended time and space. Opening it carefully, she began to read by the light of her bedside lamp. The first entries were mundane, daily life at a border outpost in the late 1950s. Her grandfather's handwriting was neat but cramped, fitting maximum information into each page. He described patrols, weather conditions, interactions with locals, nothing that explained the ominous warning on the first page. Then about 20 pages in, the tone changed. April 7, 1957. Something happened last night that I can't explain. Torres and I were on night patrol near the eastern ravine when we heard it. A sound like nothing I've ever encountered. Not animal, not machine. Torres said it was just the wind through the rocks, but we both know better. We reported it to Captain Hargrove, who ordered us to keep quiet. Said it was probably coyotes. But I've heard coyotes my whole life. This was something else. Maya turned the page, pulse quickening. April 12, 1957. They've brought in scientists. 3 of them, civilians and military escort. No one will tell us why they're here, but they've been setting up equipment in the ravine where Torres and I heard the sound. Hargrove has doubled the patrol routes and restricted access to the eastern sector. Something's happening that they don't want us to know about. The entries continued, documenting increasing activity at the outpost. More personnel arriving, construction equipment, late-night operations that the regular soldiers were excluded from. May 2, 1957, they're digging. Night and day now, with floodlights set up after dark. The scientists have some kind of detection equipment. They get excited when it makes a high-pitched whine. I was on perimeter guard last night and saw them pull something from the ground. Something that glowed. They rushed it into a containment crate before I could see clearly. Morris from K Company says they found a meteorite, but that doesn't explain the secrecy. Or the men in hazmat suits. Maya's hands began to tremble. Her grandfather had been documenting something beyond a simple border monitoring operation, something the government had gone to great lengths to conceal. May 18, 1957, Torres has been hospitalized. They're saying heat stroke, but I was with him when it happened. He'd been assigned to guard duty at the excavation site. When I found him, he was delirious, talking about lights underground and voices in his head. His nose was bleeding and he couldn't stand without help. Before the medics took him away, he grabbed my arm and said, "They woke something up, Rivera. Something that should have stayed buried. No one's allowed to visit him." Hargrove says he's been transferred to a facility in Nevada for specialized treatment. The entries became more fragmented after that, her grandfather's handwriting growing less precise, his thoughts less ordered. He described headaches, nosebleeds, difficulty sleeping, strange dreams of underground chambers and technologies that shouldn't exist. June 3rd, 1957, I saw it today. I wasn't supposed to, but there was a shift change mix-up, and I ended up with access to the main excavation site. They've uncovered some kind of structure about 30 feet below the surface. Not natural, constructed. Metal that doesn't look like any metal I've seen before. Symbols carved or etched into the surfaces. Nothing in any language I recognize. The scientists were arguing about whether it was Russian or something else entirely. One of them saw me watching and had me escorted out, but not before I heard one of them say, "This predates human civilization by thousands of years." Maya had to stop reading, her mind reeling. This couldn't be real. Her pragmatic, down-to-earth grandfather, a man who'd taught her to track animals and fix engines, writing about what sounded like an alien artifact. It had to be fiction, or perhaps the effects of stress or some undiagnosed condition. She flipped forward several pages, hoping to find a rational explanation. July 14, 1957. They're shutting everything down. 3 more men hospitalized with the same symptoms as Torres. The excavation equipment is being removed. I heard one of the scientists telling Hargrove that they're sealing it in place and that containment protocols are being implemented. Whatever they found, they're burying it again, this time deliberately. I don't think this is the end of it. The headaches are getting worse. I'm not the only one. Martinez and Delgado have them too. We've all had turns guarding the site. We've all been exposed to whatever's down there. I'm making copies of these notes. One set goes to my brother in New Mexico. One stays hidden here at the Outpost, where someone might find it someday if things go wrong. If you're reading this, be careful. Some doors aren't meant to be opened twice. The final entry was dated August 29, 1957. They're transferring us all out, dispersing the unit to different posts across the country. Medical evaluations first, then reassignment. I overheard the doctor telling Hargrove that our exposure levels are concerning but within acceptable parameters for continued service. What does that mean? What were we exposed to? This will be my final entry before I'm transferred. To whoever finds this journal, the truth is buried beneath the eastern ravine, beneath the Outpost foundations. A metal door with symbols, sealed and hopefully forgotten. Let it stay that way. But if the headaches and dreams spreading through the region are any indication, whatever was awakened hasn't gone back to sleep. It's waiting and listening. Maya closed the journal, her mind swimming with implications. If even half of what her grandfather had written was true, something extraordinary had happened at the Outpost. Something the government had gone to great lengths to conceal. But why was Phantom drawn to that place? And why had he appeared at her cabin as if to guide her here? The connection seemed impossible, yet undeniable. She checked her watch. 11:45 p.m. Almost time to meet Layla in the common room. Gathering the journal, dog tags, and other items from her grandfather's hidden box, Maya prepared to share what she'd found. But as she reached for her door handle, a new thought gave her pause. Elena's pointed questions about her grandfather, the background check that had somehow connected him to this region, the ranch's proximity to the abandoned outpost. Was it possible that Elena's trauma recovery program was a cover for something else? A way to monitor the area and the people drawn to it? Or was Maya's own mind creating conspiracies where none existed, another symptom of her PTSD? She hesitated, then tucked the journal into her jacket pocket, leaving the other items hidden beneath the mattress. Until she knew who to trust, it was better to keep her grandfather's full legacy protected. Taking a deep breath, Maya stepped into the hallway, ready to meet Layla and unravel the next thread of the mystery that had drawn them both to this remote corner of the American Southwest. The common room was dark when Maya entered, illuminated only by moonlight filtering through the windows. For a moment, she thought Layla hadn't come. Then a shadow detached itself from one of the armchairs. "You're late," Layla whispered. "I was about to leave. Sorry. Got caught up in what I found." And the single word held both hope and skepticism. Maya hesitated. "It's complicated. My grandfather was stationed at the Outpost in 1957. He left a journal documenting some kind of classified operation, something they found underground." Layla's face, half illuminated by moonlight, showed keen interest. "What kind of something?" "That's the crazy part. He's not entirely clear. Maybe he didn't know himself. But it sounds like they uncovered some kind of structure or artifact that predated known human civilization. At the border outpost, in the middle of nowhere, under it, in the eastern ravine." Layla was silent for a long moment. "There is a ravine east of the outpost. I've been there. There's a concrete bunker built into the hillside, sealed shut. I always thought it was just a storage facility or maybe a bomb shelter. Cold War era. According to my grandfather, it's much more than that." Maya pulled out the journal. "Read it yourself." As Layla began paging through the journal, Maya moved to the window, scanning the darkened ranch grounds. Most of the lights were off, but she could see a faint glow from Elena's office window. "This is..." Layla finally looked up, her expression unreadable. "This would explain some things." "Like what?" "Why I'm drawn to this place. Why I can't sleep unless I've walked the perimeter of that outpost. The dreams." Maya's attention snapped fully to Layla. "What dreams?" "Underground chambers. Symbols that change when you look at them directly. Voices that feel like they're inside your skull rather than heard with your ears. Layla's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. I thought it was just PTSD breakthrough, the brain processing trauma in weird ways. My grandfather mentioned dreams spreading through the region. And headaches. Have you? Yes, Layla touched her temple. Since my second night here. I assumed it was stress or altitude adjustment. Maya's mind raced. We need to go back there. To the ravine. Now? Is there a better time? Everyone's asleep. Layla seemed to weigh the risks, then nodded. There's a side door near the laundry room that doesn't connect to the alarm system. We can exit there. I want to bring Phantom, Maya said, surprising herself with the certainty of it. The Mustang? Why? I don't know. But he's connected to this somehow. He led me to the outpost in the first place, and to my grandfather's journal. Layla looked skeptical but didn't argue. Your call. But if he makes noise or draws attention, he won't. They moved silently through the darkened ranch house, avoiding the creaking floorboards that Layla had obviously mapped during previous excursions. Outside, the night was clear and cool, the Milky Way spreading across the sky like a celestial river. I'll get Phantom, Maya whispered. Meet you by the Eastern Trail in 5 minutes. The copper Mustang was waiting for her at the fence of the north paddock, as if he'd been expecting her. When Maya opened the gate, he came to her willingly, allowing her to slip a lead rope around his neck without resistance. Together they made their way to the meeting point where Layla waited with a backpack and flashlight. He really does trust you, she observed as Phantom stood calmly beside Maya. That's unusual. We understand each other, Maya said simply. The journey to the outpost was quicker this time, both women moving with purpose rather than exploration. Phantom kept pace easily, his injured legs seemingly improved further since their last trip. When they reached the abandoned compound, Layla led them past the main buildings toward a trail that wound behind the watchtower and down a gentle slope. The ravine is about half a mile this way, she explained. I found it during my second visit. Never could get inside, though. The narrow trail descended into a natural depression in the landscape. Not deep enough to be called a canyon, but definitely a ravine carved by ancient water flow. At the bottom, the moonlight revealed a concrete structure built into the hillside, partially obscured by desert vegetation. That's it, Layla said, pointing her flashlight at a heavy metal door set into the concrete face. Always locked. No windows, no other access points that I could find. As they approached, Phantom became agitated, pulling at the lead rope and snorting softly. What is it, boy? Maya asked, stroking his neck to calm him. The Mustang pawed at the ground, then jerked his head toward the concrete bunker as if trying to communicate something urgent. Maya handed Layla the lead rope and approached the bunker door. Up close, she could see that it wasn't just locked. It had been welded shut, the seams of the metal door fused to the frame. Someone really didn't want this opened again, she observed. Layla joined her, keeping a hold on Phantom's rope. There's no way in without cutting equipment. Maya ran her hand along the concrete wall adjacent to the door, feeling for any clue or hidden access. The surface was rough but solid. No obvious seams or panels. My grandfather's journal mentioned symbols on a metal door, she said, frustrated. But I don't see anything like that. Maybe this isn't the right place, Layla suggested. Or maybe what he described is inside beyond this entrance. Phantom whinnied suddenly, the sound echoing through the ravine. Both women froze, listening for any response or indication they'd been heard. We should go, Layla whispered. If someone at the ranch heard that? But Maya wasn't ready to leave. Something nagged at her, a detail from her grandfather's journal. He mentioned that they were sealing it in place and implementing containment protocols. What if this entire concrete structure was built after they found whatever was down there? A way to permanently seal the access point? Makes sense, Layla acknowledged. But that still doesn't help us get inside. Phantom pulled away from Layla suddenly, the lead rope slipping from her hands. Instead of running, however, the Mustang moved to a spot about 10 feet to the left of the bunker door. He pawed at the ground insistently, digging at the hard-packed earth. What's he doing? Layla asked. Maya approached carefully. I think he's trying to show us something. Kneeling beside Phantom, she began to help him dig, scraping away soil with her hands. After removing several inches of dirt, her fingers struck something solid, not rock metal. Layla, she called softly. Bring the flashlight. In the directed beam, Maya could see the edge of a metal plate about 2 feet square, flush with the surrounding soil and covered with decades of accumulated dirt. With Layla's help, she cleared the entire surface. Unlike the bunker door, this metal plate wasn't welded or locked. It appeared to be a maintenance access of some kind, perhaps overlooked during the final sealing of the main entrance. In one corner was a recessed handle. "Should we?" Layla asked, voicing the question hanging between them. Maya thought of her grandfather's final warning. Some doors aren't meant to be opened twice, but she'd come too far to turn back now. Whatever connection existed between her family's past, this place and Phantom himself demanded resolution. "Yeah," she decided. "We open it." Together they gripped the handle and pulled. For a moment, nothing happened. Then with a groan of protesting metal, the plate lifted, revealing a dark shaft descending into the earth. The stale air that rose from the opening carried a faint metallic scent, unlike anything Maya had encountered before. Phantom backed away, clearly unwilling to approach the opening. "Smart horse," Layla muttered. "I'm having second thoughts myself." Maya directed the flashlight beam into the shaft. A metal ladder was bolted to one side, descending about 15 feet to what appeared to be a narrow tunnel. "We didn't come this far to turn back," Maya said, though her own voice betrayed her nervousness. "If we go down there, we tie Phantom first," Layla insisted. "I don't want him falling in or running off and leaving us stranded." They secured the Mustang to a sturdy juniper tree near the shaft, leaving him enough rope to move comfortably, but not to reach the opening. He watched them with what Maya could have sworn was concern in his intelligent eyes. "We'll be back," she promised him, giving his muzzle a gentle stroke. "I'll go first," Layla said, practical and direct as always. You follow with the flashlight. If there's any sign of danger, structural issues, wildlife, anything, we back out immediately." "Agreed?" Maya nodded. "Agreed." Layla began the descent, moving carefully on the ancient ladder. Maya directed the light for her, then followed once Layla had reached the bottom safely. The tunnel below was narrow but tall enough to stand in. The walls weren't natural rock, as Maya had expected, but smooth metal with an odd, iridescent quality that seemed to shift colors in the flashlight beam. "This doesn't look like 1950s technology," Layla whispered, her voice tight. "No," Maya agreed. "It doesn't look like any technology I've ever seen." They moved forward cautiously, the tunnel extending straight ahead for about 30 feet before opening into a larger chamber. As they approached the threshold, both women stopped, stunned by what the flashlight revealed. The chamber was circular, about 40 feet in diameter, with a domed ceiling. Every surface, walls, floor, ceiling, was covered in the same iridescent metal as the tunnel, etched with intricate symbols that seemed to float just above the surface rather than being carved into it. But it was the object in the center of the chamber that drew their attention. A raised platform held what appeared to be a metallic sphere about 4 feet in diameter. Unlike the rest of the chamber, the sphere was matte black, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. "What is that?" Layla breathed. "I don't know," Maya replied, "but I think this is what my grandfather's unit uncovered." As they stood transfixed in the doorway, a low humming began, so subtle at first that Maya felt rather than heard it. Then the symbols on the walls began to glow faintly, casting the chamber in an eerie bluish light that pulsed in rhythm with the humming. "We need to leave," Layla said urgently. "Now." Maya knew she was right. Everything about this screamed danger, but she couldn't move, transfixed by the pulsing light in the sphere at the chamber's center. The humming seemed to resonate inside her skull, filling her mind with images of stars and strange landscapes unlike anything on Earth. "Maya," Layla grabbed her arm. "We need to go." The physical contact broke whatever hold the chamber had on her. Maya blinked, suddenly aware of a warm trickle from her nose. Blood, just as her grandfather had described. They backed out of the chamber, turned, and hurried down the tunnel toward the ladder. Behind them, the humming intensified, and the blue glow from the chamber grew brighter, casting their shadows long before them. As they reached the ladder, a deep vibration shook the entire structure. Dust and small fragments of metal rained down from the ceiling. "You first," Layla insisted, pushing Maya toward the ladder. Maya didn't argue, climbing as quickly as safety allowed. When she reached the surface, she turned to help Layla, who was close behind. The moment they were both out, another, stronger tremor shook the ground. The metal access plate, which they'd left propped open, slammed shut of its own accord with a finality that sent chills through Maya's body. Phantom was whinnying frantically, pulling at his lead rope, desperate to be away from the site. "I think that's good advice," Layla said, already untying him. They didn't speak again until they were well away from the ravine, heading back toward the Outpost main buildings. Behind them, the concrete bunker stood as silent and undisturbed as before, giving no indication of what lay beneath or what they might have awakened. "What the hell was that?" Layla finally asked when they stopped to catch their breath. Maya touched her upper lip, fingers coming away stained with blood. "Something not meant to be disturbed." Just like my grandfather wrote. Phantom stood close beside her, his body warm against her side in the cool night air. The Mustang's presence felt protective, almost guardian-like. Had he known what was down there? Had he been trying to warn them rather than guide them? The headache, Layla said, pressing her palm to her forehead. It's worse now. Maya felt it too, a pressure behind her eyes that pulsed in the same rhythm as the glowing symbols. It'll fade, she said, hoping she was right. How do you know? Because my grandfather lived for decades after his exposure, started a family, lived a normal life. Maya wasn't sure if she was trying to convince Layla or herself. Maybe his exposure was limited, Layla countered, or maybe the effects are cumulative. They both fell silent, contemplating implications neither wanted to voice. We can't tell anyone about this, Maya finally said. Not until we understand more, Layla nodded. Agreed. But whatever's down there, it's active now. And I think it knows we found it. The thought sent a new chill through Maya's body. She remembered the sensation in the chamber, the feeling that something was reaching into her mind, examining her thoughts like specimens under glass. Let's get back, she said. We can talk more tomorrow, figure out what to do. But as they approached the outpost, they realized something was wrong. Lights blazed from the windows of the main buildings that had been dark when they left. And parked in what had been an empty courtyard were 3 black SUVs with government plates. That's not good, Layla whispered, pulling Maya and Phantom behind a tumble of rocks for cover. From their vantage point, they could see figures moving around the outpost, men and women in tactical gear, carrying equipment into the buildings. More concerning was the familiar figure directing their activities. Elena Blackwood. She's involved, Maya breathed. Whatever this is, she's part of it. We can't go back to the ranch, Layla decided. Not tonight. Maybe not at all. Then where? Layla looked thoughtful. I know a place. An old line shack about 5 miles north of here. I found it during one of my walks. It's isolated, probably forgotten. Maya nodded, making a quick decision. Lead the way. As they circled wide around the outpost, keeping to shadows and natural cover, Maya felt a strange certainty growing within her. The random events that had brought her here, Phantom's appearance at her cabin, Brenner's call about the therapy program, finding her grandfather's journal, none of it was coincidence. Whatever lay beneath the desert soil had been reaching out, calling to those connected to its discovery. And now that they had answered that call, had re-established contact after decades of dormancy, what would follow? The headache intensified as they walked, and beside her, she noticed Layla occasionally wipe at her own nose, her fingers coming away with traces of blood. Phantom stayed close, his movements protective, almost herding them forward into the wilderness and away from what they had disturbed. By the time the eastern sky began to lighten with approaching dawn, all 3 of them, 2 wounded warriors and a scarred Mustang, had disappeared into the vast desert landscape, pursued by forces they didn't understand and couldn't yet fight. Behind them, the ancient thing beneath the ravine continued its pulsing song, a beacon now transmitting to the stars above. The line shack materialized out of the desert haze like a mirage, its weathered wooden walls barely distinguishable from the surrounding landscape. Tucked between 2 rocky outcroppings and sheltered by ancient juniper trees, it might have been built specifically to remain unseen. How did you find this place? Maya asked as they approached, her voice rough from the night's long trek. Accident, Layla replied. Got turned around during a sandstorm last week. Waited it out here. She gestured toward the small structure. Someone maintained it fairly recently. There's a rainwater collection system on the roof that still works. The interior was spare but functional. A small table with 2 chairs, a metal frame cot against one wall, shelves stocked with basic supplies, and a wood stove that doubled as a cooking surface. A single window, its glass cloudy with age, offered a view of the desert stretching toward distant mountains. Maya sank onto one of the chairs, the exhaustion crashing over her in waves. The headache that had begun in the underground chamber now throbbed behind her eyes, and occasional drops of blood still fell from her nose. She wiped them away with the back of her hand, leaving rusty streaks on her skin. We need to figure out what's happening, she said, as Layla checked the cabinet for supplies. What was that thing? And why is Elena involved? First things first. Layla placed a canteen of water in front of Maya. Drink. You're dehydrated. I'll check on Phantom. The copper Mustang stood just outside, still on his lead rope. Unlike at the ranch, where he'd required a paddock to contain him, here in the open desert he made no attempt to flee. Instead, he remained close to the shack, alternating between grazing on sparse vegetation and watching the horizon with alert attention. Maya sipped the water slowly, trying to organize her thoughts. The events of the past 24 hours felt like something from a science fiction novel, not reality. Yet the physical evidence was undeniable. The underground chamber with its impossible technology, the nosebleeds, the headaches, and the government presence that had appeared so quickly after their exploration. When Layla returned, Maya noticed she looked as rough as Maya felt. Blood had dried at the corner of her mouth, and she moved with the careful precision of someone in pain. "It's affecting you too," Maya observed. Layla nodded, taking the second chair. "Same as your grandfather described. Headache, nosebleeds, and," she hesitated, "dreams or visions or whatever you want to call them. Even though I haven't slept." "What kind of visions?" "Stars, landscapes that can't be Earth, structures built from materials that shouldn't exist." Layla rubbed her temples. "And voices, not exactly speaking, but communicating somehow. Directly into my mind." Maya felt a chill despite the morning warmth. "I've had the same experiences. Since the chamber. It's like it connected with us. Or we connected with it." Layla's eyes held a mixture of fear and fascination. "Whatever that sphere is, it's not from here." The word hung unspoken between them. Alien. Not of this Earth. The logical part of Maya's mind resisted the conclusion, searching for more rational explanations. An experimental government project from the Cold War era. A natural phenomenon with unusual properties. Anything but the implication that something extraterrestrial lay buried beneath the New Mexico desert. "We need more information," Maya said finally. "My grandfather's journal mentioned other documents, copies he sent to his brother. If we could find those..." "You think they survived all these years?" "Worth a try." Maya pulled out her phone, unsurprised to find no signal this far from civilization. "My great-uncle Diego lived in Los Alamos until he died about 10 years ago. His son, my second cousin, still has the family house there." "Los Alamos," Layla repeated, the significance not lost on her. "Home of the National Laboratory, where they built the atomic bomb. Where better to hide information about something the government wanted to contain?" Maya paused, a new thought striking her. "My grandfather worked as a consultant for the lab after leaving the military. I never connected it before. But what if that wasn't a coincidence? What if they kept him close, monitored him because of his exposure to whatever's in that chamber?" "It would explain Elena's interest in your family history," Layla agreed, "and the background check she claimed to have run." Maya walked to the window, gazing out at the desert landscape where Phantom grazed peacefully. "We need to get to Los Alamos. My cousin Carlos is a history professor, specifically military history. If anyone would have preserved old family documents, it's him." "Small problem," Layla gestured around the shack. "No car, no phones, and probably people looking for us by now." "Joe might help," Maya suggested. "He seemed to know more than he was saying about the Outpost, and he's the one who let me take Phantom in the first place." "You trust him?" Maya considered the question. "More than I trust Elena. But we'd need a way to contact him without alerting anyone at the ranch." "There's a radio," Layla said, pointing to a shelf above the wood stove. "Old ham setup. I noticed it when I was here during the sandstorm, but didn't have a reason to try it." The radio was indeed vintage, probably from the 1970s, but appeared well maintained. When Layla powered it up using a solar battery pack stored nearby, it crackled to life, searching through frequencies. "Do you know how to use this?" Maya asked. "Basic training included communications equipment." Layla adjusted dials with practiced hands. "Not this exact model, but similar enough. The question is, who might be listening on these bands?" They spent the next hour trying different frequencies, sending out general calls for assistance without specifying their location or identities. Just as they were about to give up, a crackled response came through. "This is Mesa Shadow receiving." "Identify yourselves," the voice was unmistakable. Joe Begay. "It's Maya," she responded, relief flooding through her. "And Layla. We need help." A long pause then. "Location?" Layla described the line shack and its approximate position relative to the outpost. "I know it," Joe confirmed. "Stay put. We'll approach after dark." "Over and out." The radio went silent, leaving Maya and Layla to wait through the long, hot day. They took turns sleeping on the cot, though real rest proved elusive. The visions intensified whenever Maya closed her eyes. Star maps and strange symbols flooding her consciousness, along with a sense of urgency she couldn't explain. While Layla slept fitfully in the afternoon heat, Maya sat outside with Phantom, finding comfort in the Mustang's steady presence. The copper horse stayed close, occasionally nudging her shoulder with his muzzle, or standing protectively between her and the distant horizon. "You knew, didn't you?" she murmured, stroking his neck. "About what was under the outpost? That's why you came to my cabin that morning. To bring me here." Phantom's intelligent eyes seemed to hold answers he couldn't communicate, at least not in words. But Maya felt understood in a way that transcended language. Whatever connection existed between them went deeper than her experience with any other animal. She pulled out her grandfather's journal again, flipping to the final entries, searching for anything she might have missed. In the back pages, she found a series of sketches, detailed renderings of the symbols her grandfather had seen on the metal surfaces in the underground chamber. The same symbols she and Layla had witnessed glowing with that eerie blue light. With a jolt, Maya realized she could read them now. Not comprehend their exact meaning, but sense the patterns and relationships between different groupings. Knowledge that she hadn't possessed before entering the chamber was now unfolding in her mind like a flower opening to the sun. "Maya," Layla's voice came from the doorway of the shack, tight with concern. "You're bleeding again." Maya touched her face, fingers coming away red. The nosebleed had returned without her noticing. But more disturbing was Layla's appearance. Blood trickled from her ears, thin rivulets running down her neck. "We need medical attention," Maya said, rising quickly. "This is getting worse." "And tell them what?" Layla wiped at the blood with her sleeve. "That we were exposed to possibly alien technology from the 1950s? They'll think we're having a shared psychotic episode." She wasn't wrong. The standard test would likely show nothing beyond elevated brain activity. And given Elena's connection to whatever government agency had appeared at the outpost, seeking help from traditional medical channels might expose them to the very people they were hiding from. "My cousin in Los Alamos," Maya said slowly. "His wife is a neurologist at the lab. If we can get there," Layla nodded, determination replacing the momentary fear. "Then we wait for Joe and hope he can help get us there." The sun sank toward the western horizon, painting the desert in gold and crimson. Maya's headache ebbed and flowed like the tide, moments of piercing pain alternating with strange clarity. During one such clear moment, she found herself drawing in the sandy soil outside the shack, complex interconnected symbols like those in the chamber. "It's changing us," Layla observed, watching from a few feet away. "Whatever was down there, it's in our heads now." "Not changing," Maya corrected, though she wasn't sure how she knew this. "Connecting, like it's trying to establish communication. By giving us brain hemorrhages? Maybe it doesn't understand human physiology. Or maybe we're not compatible with whatever method it uses to communicate." Maya brushed away the symbols she'd drawn, suddenly uneasy. "My grandfather survived the exposure. So will we." "Your grandfather wasn't in direct contact with the sphere," Layla pointed out. "We were." Before Maya could respond, Phantom's ears pricked forward, his posture alerting to something beyond human perception. Moments later, she heard it too, the faint but unmistakable sound of a vehicle engine in the distance. "Get inside," Layla said sharply, already moving toward the shack. "Could be Joe. Could be someone else." They retreated inside, Layla positioning herself near the window with a clear view of the approaching vehicle, while Maya checked the back exit, a narrow door that opened onto a rough path leading into the juniper grove behind the shack. "Single vehicle," Layla reported, "coming from the northeast, driving without headlights." Maya joined her at the window, pulse quickening. The approaching vehicle was now visible, a battered green Jeep moving slowly across the uneven terrain. "That's Joe's Jeep," she said with relief. "I saw it parked behind his cabin at the ranch." Still, they waited cautiously as the vehicle came to a stop about 50 yards from the shack. A single figure emerged, Joe Begay, carrying what appeared to be a canvas duffel bag. He approached slowly, hands visible, clearly aware they might be watching. Maya opened the door when he was about 20 feet away. "You came." "Said I would." Joe's sharp eyes took in their condition immediately, the blood stains, the pallor of their skin, the tension in their postures. "You found something at the outpost, something you shouldn't have." It wasn't a question. Maya nodded, stepping aside to let him enter the shack. "How bad is it?" he asked, setting down the duffel bag and retrieving a first aid kit from inside. "Headaches, nosebleeds, blood from the ears now too." Layla gestured between herself and Maya. "And visions, or hallucinations. Whatever you want to call them." Joe nodded grimly, as if this confirmed something he already knew. "Let me check you both." With practiced efficiency, he examined their eyes, took their pulse, and checked their blood pressure using a small portable monitor from his kit. His expression grew increasingly concerned. You opened it, didn't you? He finally asked. The chamber beneath the ravine. Maya's breath caught. You knew about it? I know many things about this land. Joe began preparing 2 syringes, drawing medication from a small vial, including what happens to those who disturb what sleeps beneath it. What is that? Layla asked, eyeing the syringes warily. Something to help with the symptoms. To slow the progression. Joe's voice was matter-of-fact. It won't cure you, but it will buy time. I've used it before. On who? Maya asked. Joe's eyes met hers, ancient pain evident in their depths. My father. He was stationed at the Outpost in 1957, like your grandfather. Corporal Thomas Begay, Navajo code talker recruited for special communications duty at the border installation. The connection clicked into place. He was there when they discovered the chamber. Joe nodded. One of the first exposed. The military monitored him for years afterward, disguising it as veterans' health care. The headaches never fully went away. The dreams either. He offered the first syringe to Maya. This will help. Trust me. Maya hesitated only briefly before rolling up her sleeve. Whatever Joe was offering couldn't be worse than the steadily worsening symptoms. The injection stung, but almost immediately the pressure behind her eyes began to ease. As Joe administered the second dose to Layla, Maya asked, What do you know about what's down there? Only stories passed down. My father wouldn't speak of it directly, military oaths even after discharge. But in his final years, when the dreams became more intense, he told me enough. Joe packed away the medical supplies. The people have always known that place was different, sacred or cursed, depending on who you ask. The old ones say visitors came from the sky there, long before Europeans or even the ancient ones who built the cliff dwellings. Visitors, Layla repeated. You mean aliens? Joe shrugged. Call them what you will. The stories say they left something behind, a seed or a beacon, something that would one day call them back. Maya thought of the black sphere in the chamber, its surface absorbing all light, and the military found it in the 50s. They were looking for uranium deposits, Joe explained. Found something else instead, something that affected everyone who came in contact with it. My father said some men went mad. Others developed strange abilities, knowing things they shouldn't know, seeing places they'd never been. Like remote viewing, Layla suggested. The government studied it for months before deciding it was too dangerous to continue. They sealed the chamber, scattered everyone who'd been involved, and buried the whole incident under layers of classification. Until now, Maya said quietly. Until we opened it again. Joe's expression turned grim. There was? There's more. Elena knows what you did. The ranch has been evacuated. All the veterans transferred to other facilities. Government teams are sweeping the area. Looking for us, Layla concluded. Among other things, Joe gestured toward the duffel bag. I brought supplies. Food, water, clothes. And this. He pulled out an old service revolver, checking the cylinder before offering it to Layla. Just in case. Maya's military instincts kicked in, assessing their situation with tactical precision. We can't stay here. They'll expand the search perimeter eventually. I can get you to the highway, Joe offered. From there, you're on your own. We need to reach Los Alamos, Maya explained. My cousin might have more of my grandfather's records about what happened at the outpost. And his wife is a neurologist. She might be able to help with our condition. Joe considered this. It's about 4 hours by car. I can't take you all the way, too risky for all of us. But I know someone in Santa Fe who might help. Old army buddy who owes me a favor. What about Phantom? Maya asked, suddenly reluctant to leave the Mustang behind. I'll take him back to the ranch when things cool down, Joe assured her. Though I suspect he'd follow you across the desert if given the chance. Never seen a wild horse bond with someone so quickly. They packed quickly, taking only essentials. As Maya stepped outside to say goodbye to Phantom, the sunset had given way to deep twilight, stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky. The copper Mustang stood nearby, watching her with those knowing eyes that seemed to see beyond the surface. When she approached, he lowered his head to touch her shoulder, an unmistakable gesture of connection. I'll come back for you, she promised, stroking his muzzle. When this is over. As if understanding, Phantom nickered softly, his breath warm against her skin. The drive across the desert was tense, Joe taking rugged back routes to avoid potential checkpoints. They traveled in near silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The medication had reduced Maya's headache to a dull throb, but the visions remained, floating at the edges of her consciousness like half-remembered dreams. What does Elena want with the sphere? she finally asked as they approached a seldom-used access road that would eventually connect with the highway. Power, Joe replied simply. Same thing they all want. The military, the government, the scientists. They believe whatever's down there can be weaponized, controlled. Can it? Joe's laugh held no humor. You've experienced it firsthand. Does it seem like something that can be controlled? Maya thought of the way the chamber had activated upon their entry, how the sphere had somehow reached into their minds without physical contact. No, it seems like something that controls you. Exactly. Joe slowed the Jeep as they approached a crossroads. My father believed it was a test. The visitors left it to see what we would do when we found it, whether we would try to use it for destruction or for knowledge. And which did we choose? Layla asked from the back seat. What do governments always choose when faced with technology they don't understand? Joe's expression was grim in the dashboard light. They tried to weaponize it. That's when the accidents started happening. Men dying of mysterious brain hemorrhages. Others going insane, claiming they could hear voices from the stars. Maya's hand unconsciously moved to her nose, checking for fresh blood. Is that what's happening to us? Not exactly. The sphere seems to affect different people in different ways. Some it kills quickly. Others it changes gradually. Joe glanced at her. Your grandfather survived it. Lived a full life despite the connection. But why us? Why now? Layla pressed. That thing's been buried for decades. Joe was silent for a long moment. The old ones say there are cycles to all things. Stars, seasons, even civilizations. Maybe this is part of a cycle we don't understand yet. They drove in silence for another 20 minutes before Joe pulled over at an abandoned gas station just off the main highway. This is as far as I go, he said. My contact will meet you here in about an hour. Name's Rodriguez, Vietnam vet, helicopter pilot. He'll get you to Los Alamos. As they transferred their supplies to the sheltered area behind the gas station, Joe handed Maya a small leather pouch. More of the medication, he explained, and something else that might help. Inside was a small silver medallion etched with symbols reminiscent of those in the underground chamber. My father's. He said it protected him from the worst effects. I can't take this, Maya protested. You must, Joe closed her fingers around the pouch. The connection between your family and mine goes back to that outpost. This is part of it. His words carried the weight of generations, of secrets passed down, of burdens shared. Maya nodded, accepting both the gift and the responsibility it represented. What will you do now? She asked. Go back. Keep an eye on things. They don't suspect me yet, just the old ranch caretaker beneath their notice. Joe's smile was grim. I'll make sure Phantom is safe until you return. What if we can't return? Layla asked the question Maya couldn't bring herself to voice. Then find a way to stop whatever's beginning, Joe replied. Because make no mistake, this is just the beginning. The sphere is active now, calling, and sooner or later, something will answer. With those ominous words hanging in the air, he returned to his Jeep and drove away, headlights cutting through the desert darkness before disappearing into the night. Left alone at the abandoned gas station, Maya and Layla took stock of their situation. The medication had stabilized their symptoms for now, but both knew it was temporary relief at best. Whatever changes the sphere had initiated were continuing, manifesting in increasingly disturbing ways. I can read the symbols now, Maya admitted as they waited. Not just recognize them, actually comprehend what they're saying. Layla's expression revealed no surprise. I've been having conversations in my head with someone, or something, that isn't me. In a language I've never heard but somehow understand. They shared a look of mutual understanding and fear. The transformation had begun, and neither knew where it would lead. If we can't reverse this, Layla began. We will, Maya interrupted, unwilling to consider the alternative. My grandfather found a way to live with it. There must be answers in Los Alamos. The sound of an approaching helicopter shattered the night stillness. They watched as it descended into a flat area about 100 yards from the gas station, its rotors kicking up clouds of dust in the moonlight. A figure emerged from the cockpit and approached. An older Latino man with salt and pepper hair and the practiced movement of someone who had seen combat. Rodriguez, he introduced himself simply. Joe said you ladies need a lift. The helicopter ride was both exhilarating and terrifying. Rodriguez flew low, following the contours of the land to avoid radar detection. He asked no questions about their blood-stained clothes or the nature of their emergency, displaying the discretion of someone accustomed to operating in gray areas. As they approached Los Alamos, the lights of the town and the sprawling National Laboratory Complex came into view. Here, decades earlier, the most destructive weapon in human history had been born. And now they were returning, seeking information about something potentially more dangerous. A technology not of human origin, with purposes they could only guess at. "Your cousin expecting you?" Rodriguez asked as they began their descent toward a small private airfield on the outskirts of town. "No," Maya admitted, "but Carlos will help us. He's family." The helicopter touched down smoothly. Rodriguez handed them a burner phone. "Call this number if you need extraction. No questions asked, but only one pickup. Make it count." Maya thanked him, tucking the phone into her pocket alongside her grandfather's dog tags and Joe's medallion, talismans from the past that might guide their future. As the helicopter lifted off again, Maya and Layla stood facing the lights of Los Alamos, a city built on secrets and science, where the boundaries of human knowledge had been pushed beyond safe limits before. "Ready?" Layla asked, adjusting the duffel bag on her shoulder. Maya nodded, feeling the weight of whatever lay ahead. "Let's find some answers." They began walking toward town, two soldiers carrying an invisible war within their changing minds, pursued by forces both human and possibly otherwise. Behind them, somewhere in the New Mexico desert, an ancient sentinel continued its silent broadcast to the stars. And high above, those same stars seemed to watch with patient, timeless attention, waiting for the next move in a game that had begun millennia before. The taxi dropped them at a modest two-story house on the outskirts of Los Alamos, its adobe walls glowing warmly in the porch light. It was nearly midnight, but light still burned in a ground-floor window. Carlos was a night owl, just like his Uncle Miguel had been. Maya hesitated at the gate, suddenly uncertain. She hadn't seen her cousin in years. What would he think of her appearing unannounced in the middle of the night, blood-stained and desperate, with a stranger in tow? "We don't have much choice," Layla reminded her gently. "The medication won't last forever." Taking a deep breath, Maya walked up the flagstone path and rang the doorbell. Long moments passed before footsteps approached, and the door opened to reveal a man in his early 50s with the distinctive Rivera eyes and a neatly trimmed beard flecked with gray. "Maya?" Carlos's surprise quickly shifted to concern as he took in her appearance. "What happened? Are you hurt?" "It's complicated," she replied. "We need your help, Carlos. It's about Abuelo Miguel and what happened to him at the border outpost in 1957. Carlos went very still, his expression changing from concern to something more guarded. "How do you know about that?" "I found his journal." "At the outpost," Maya gestured to Layla. "This is Layla Dawson. She was there too." "We both were." For a tense moment, Maya thought he might close the door. Instead, he stepped back, opening it wider. "You'd better come in," he said quietly, "and tell me everything." Inside, the house was filled with books and artifacts, the home of a lifetime academic. Carlos led them to a study lined with bookshelves and filing cabinets, the walls covered with historical maps and photographs. "Sit," he instructed, pointing to a worn leather couch. "You both look like you're about to collapse." As they settled onto the couch, Carlos poured 3 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. "Medicinal purposes," he explained, handing them each a glass. "Now tell me what's going on." For the next 30 minutes, Maya and Layla took turns explaining everything, from Phantom's appearance at Maya's cabin to their discovery of the underground chamber and subsequent symptoms. Carlos listened without interruption, his expression grave but unsurprised. "So it's active again," he said when they finished, more to himself than to them. "After all these years." "You knew about it?" Maya asked, leaning forward. "About what's under the outpost?" Carlos nodded slowly. "Not all the details, but enough. Uncle Miguel shared certain things with my father before he died. Made him promise to preserve the records, just in case." "In case of what?" "In case it ever woke up again." Carlos moved to a filing cabinet in the corner, unlocking it with a key he wore around his neck, which apparently it has. From the cabinet, he withdrew a metal box similar to the one Maya had found at the outpost, but larger and better preserved. He placed it on the coffee table between them. "Uncle Miguel called this his insurance policy," Carlos explained. "Said if anything ever happened to him that seemed connected to the outpost, we should open it and follow the instructions inside." Maya felt a chill despite the room's warmth. "What kind of instructions?" "I don't know. I've honored his request not to open it unless necessary." Carlos fixed her with a piercing gaze. "I think that time has come, don't you?" The box was secured with a combination lock. Carlos spun the dials carefully, entering a sequence of numbers. "His military ID," he explained as the lock clicked open. "He said we'd remember it if needed." Inside the box were several items: a thicker journal than the one Maya had found, a manila envelope full of photographs, a small recording device of 1970s vintage, and a sealed letter addressed to Family of Miguel Rivera, open only in emergency. Carlos handed the letter to Maya. I think this is meant for you now. With trembling fingers, Maya broke the seal and unfolded the yellowed paper. Her grandfather's handwriting, familiar yet somehow more urgent than in the journal, filled the page. To whoever reads this, if you've opened this letter, it means the chamber beneath the outpost has been discovered again, and you or someone you care about has been exposed to its influence. I am truly sorry. I tried to ensure it would remain buried and forgotten, but some secrets are too significant to stay hidden forever. What you found is not of human origin. The military scientists called it a technology seed or communication node, but these terms barely touch its true nature. It was left here thousands of years ago by beings from another star system. Whether as a gift, a test, or something else, I cannot say. Those of us exposed to it in 1957 experienced the same symptoms you're likely suffering now: headaches, nosebleeds, visions. For most, these eventually subsided, leaving only occasional episodes throughout our lives. But the connection never fully disappears. It becomes part of you. The government sought to weaponize it, to reverse engineer its technology. Their efforts led only to tragedy, minds broken, lives lost. They finally determined it was safer to bury it again, to hide its existence beneath layers of classification and denial. But I knew it wasn't over. The object, the sphere, is patient. It operates on timescales beyond human comprehension, and it learns from each interaction. You need to understand, it's not just communicating with you, it's changing you, altering neural pathways to create receivers compatible with its transmission methods. The process is dangerous for humans. Our brains aren't designed for such interaction. Some cannot survive the transformation. Others emerge different. I was one of the lucky ones. The change is stabilized. I learned to live with the connection, to wall it off in my mind except in dreams. The enclosed journal documents my experiences over decades, including treatments that helped manage the symptoms. But there is something more urgent I must share. The sphere is part of a network, a system of similar devices placed across our world and perhaps others. When active, they communicate with each other and with their point of origin. If you've reactivated the one beneath the outpost, others may awaken in response. On the enclosed recording, you'll find coordinates for 2 other sites I became aware of through my connection with the sphere. I've never visited them, but I know they exist. If the government has found you, they will be seeking these locations as well, trying once again to claim power they cannot possibly control. You have a choice now that I never had, to help contain this discovery once more, or to pursue understanding of what it truly is and what it wants from humanity. I cannot tell you which path is right. I can only offer what I've learned through decades of carrying this burden. Trust those who seek knowledge over power. Be wary of those who would weaponize the unknown. And remember that not all that reaches from the stars does so with hostility, though intentions across such vast differences may be impossible for us to fully comprehend. Whatever you decide, know that you are not alone. Others have walked this path before you. Some still live, carrying the changes as I did. Find them if you can. With love and regret, Miguel Rivera, Los Alamos, 1991. Maya finished reading, her hands shaking so badly that Layla gently took the letter from her. So we're not going crazy, Layla said after scanning the contents. It's actually changing our brains. Apparently. Maya looked to Carlos. Did he mention others? People who survived the exposure? Carlos nodded. A few names over the years. Most have passed away now. He paused. Except one that I know of. A scientist who was present during the original excavation, Dr. Eleanor Weaver. She'd be in her 90s now, but as far as I know, she's still alive, living in a care facility in Santa Fe. We need to talk to her, Maya decided, and we need to listen to that recording. Carlos retrieved an old tape player from his desk drawer. I've kept everything functioning, just in case. He inserted the cassette and pressed play. Her grandfather's voice filled the room, younger than Maya had ever known him, but unmistakable in its cadence and tone. Coordinates follow for sites 2 and 3. I've never confirmed these locations personally, but the knowledge came to me during what the doctors called fugue states after my exposure. I believe them to be accurate. He proceeded to read off 2 sets of coordinates, one located in the Arctic Circle, the other in the South American Andes. 3 points, Layla observed, forming a triangle across the Earth. A network, Maya confirmed, recalling her grandfather's letter. Communicating across vast distances. Carlos stopped the tape. There's more, details about his treatments, his experiences over the years. We should review it all. He glanced at his watch. But first, you both need medical attention. Anna will be home from her shift at the lab in about an hour. She can help assess your condition. At the mention of Carlos's wife, Maya felt a surge of hope. Ana Diaz Rivera was not just a neurologist, but a specialist in brain-computer interfaces. If anyone could help them understand the physiological changes they were experiencing, it would be her. Until then, Carlos continued, you should rest. The guest rooms are prepared. I'll show you. One more thing, Maya said, retrieving Joe's medallion from her pocket. Joe Begay gave me this. Said it might help with the symptoms. It has similar markings to what we saw in the chamber. Carlos examined the medallion with obvious recognition. Uncle Miguel had one just like it. Said it helped modulate the connection somehow, like a buffer or filter. He never went anywhere without it. Did it work? Layla asked. He lived to be 82, Carlos replied, with all his faculties intact until the end. That's more than can be said for many who were exposed. As they followed Carlos upstairs to the guest rooms, Maya felt the weight of what they'd learned settling over her. The sphere wasn't just an artifact. It was part of a vast, ancient system spanning the globe. And it wasn't just affecting their minds. It was actively reshaping them for some unknown purpose. Yet beneath the fear was a whisper of something else, a growing curiosity, even fascination, with the knowledge unfolding in her transformed consciousness. Star maps and mathematical concepts she'd never studied now seemed intuitive. Languages she'd never heard felt almost familiar. Was this how her grandfather had felt? This strange blend of terror and wonder at becoming something neither fully human nor fully other. As she settled onto the bed in the guest room, Maya placed Joe's medallion around her neck, feeling its cool weight against her skin. The headache receded slightly, the mental static clearing. For the first time since entering the chamber, she felt a measure of control returning. Beyond the window, the lights of Los Alamos National Laboratory glowed in the distance, the birthplace of atomic weapons, where humans had first harnessed the power of the stars. Now it would become ground zero for a different kind of revelation, as they confronted a technology so advanced it might as well be magic. Maya closed her eyes not to sleep, but to access the new pathways forming in her mind, to explore the knowledge being downloaded into her consciousness like a transmission from across the void. Whatever came next would change everything, not just for her and Layla, but potentially for all of humanity. The copper Mustang had led her to this threshold between worlds. Now she would have to find her own path forward, into a future where the stars were no longer silent and Earth was no longer alone. 3 days in Los Alamos had brought Maya both answers and more questions. Ana Diaz Rivera's brain scans confirmed what they already suspected. The neural architecture in both Maya's and Layla's brains was changing, new connections forming in patterns that defied conventional neuroscience. It's like watching evolution in fast forward, Ana had explained, pointing to the glowing images on her private lab monitor. These pathways shouldn't be possible. The brain doesn't reorganize itself this way naturally. Maya stood on the balcony of Carlos's house, watching dawn break over the mountains. Behind her inside, Layla and Carlos were reviewing the last of Miguel Rivera's recordings, detailed accounts of his decades living with the changes initiated by contact with the sphere. The medallion hung around Maya's neck, its weight now familiar, even comforting. With it, she could control the flow of information, filter the constant stream of images and knowledge being channeled into her consciousness. Without it, the visions overwhelmed her, leaving her disoriented and physically ill. The bleeding has stopped, Ana said, joining her on the balcony with 2 steaming mugs of coffee. That's a good sign. It suggests your brain is adapting rather than deteriorating. Maya accepted the coffee gratefully. Adapting to what exactly? If I didn't know better, I'd say it's creating a receiver. Ana's scientific precision was both reassuring and terrifying. Your brain patterns show similarities to quantum communication models, theoretical architecture for receiving information across vast distances instantaneously. The sphere is talking to us, Maya said simply. Or through us, not just talking, teaching. Ana leaned against the railing, her gaze distant. The question is, what does it want you to learn? And why now? It was the question that had haunted them since fleeing the desert. Maya's grandfather had lived with his partial connection for decades, the sphere dormant and sealed away. What had changed? The answer came from an unexpected source. Yesterday's video call with Dr. Eleanor Weaver, the last living scientist from the original excavation, had revealed a crucial detail. Celestial alignment, the elderly physicist had explained, her voice frail but her mind still razor sharp. The spheres were placed to activate during specific cosmic alignments. We calculated that the next significant one would occur in the spring of 2025. Now, as Maya sipped her coffee, she felt the pieces connecting, not just in her mind, but across decades and possibly centuries. The timing of Phantom's appearance at her cabin, the strange pull that had drawn both her and Layla to the Outpost, even Elena's therapy program, strategically located near the buried sphere. They've known this was coming, she murmured. Seven, you're in, the government. Elena. They've been preparing. For what? Anna asked. Contact. The word hung in the early morning air, both hopeful and ominous. The spheres aren't just communication devices, they're beacons. And the alignment is the trigger for whatever comes next. The sliding door opened behind them as Layla stepped onto the balcony, looking more rested than she had in days. The treatments Anna had developed, based on Miguel Rivera's notes, were helping stabilize her condition as well. Carlos found something, Layla announced, her voice tense with urgency. Satellite images from the outpost. You need to see this. In Carlos's study, satellite footage played on his computer monitor. Thermal imagery of the area surrounding the abandoned border outpost. Even to Maya's untrained eye, the anomaly was obvious. A bright, pulsating heat signature centered on the ravine where they'd found the underground chamber. This was taken yesterday, Carlos explained. The energy output has increased tenfold since you opened the access point. And look, he pointed to small figures visible around the site. Government personnel, military. They've established a full research base there in just a few days. Elena, Maya asked. Carlos nodded grimly. Anna identified her from the personnel files. Dr. Elena Blackwood, formerly with DARPA, specializing in non-conventional energy sources and communications technology. The therapy ranch was just a cover, a way to monitor people drawn to the sphere's influence. We were lab rats, Layla said bitterly, brought there to see how we'd respond to proximity to the sphere. Not just any people, Maya realized. Veterans with PTSD, people whose brains were already rewired by trauma, more susceptible to further changes. The implications were chilling. For years, possibly decades, Elena had been screening candidates, identifying those most likely to form successful connections with the alien technology. There's more, Carlos said, switching to another satellite view. Similar energy signatures have been detected at the exact coordinates your grandfather identified. Arctic Circle and Andes. They've activated too. The network is coming online. Maya felt the medallion grow warm against her skin, resonating with the energy patterns displayed on the screen. Images flooded her mind. Not chaotic visions now, but coherent data. The three sites forming an equilateral triangle around the Earth. Energy pulses synchronizing in patterns that corresponded to mathematical sequences. Something's coming, she whispered, her hand closing around the medallion. The network is preparing for arrival. How long do we have? Layla asked, her military training asserting itself as she instinctively began thinking in tactical terms. Carlos checked the astronomical data he'd compiled. The exact alignment occurs in 3 days. If Dr. Weaver's calculations are correct, that's when maximum energy transfer will be possible. A charged silence filled the room as they absorbed the implications. Whatever the spheres had been placed to summon or contact was responding after millennia of waiting, and the U.S. government, or at least the shadow agency Elena represented, was attempting to control the outcome. We need to go back, Maya said suddenly, the certainty crystallizing in her transformed mind. To the outpost. Back? Anna looked alarmed. The place is crawling with military personnel. They're probably looking for you both right now. I know, but we're part of this now. Maya touched her temple. The sphere chose us as conduits. If Elena and her people try to weaponize this technology to militarize first contact, it would be disastrous, Carlos finished, understanding immediately. Like giving nuclear weapons to medieval knights. But what can we do against an entire government operation? Anna asked pragmatically. Maya closed her eyes, accessing the new pathways in her mind. Information flowed through her consciousness. Not just data, but understanding. The spheres have fail-safes. They can't be forced into functions they weren't designed for. That's why previous attempts to weaponize them failed. How do you know that? Layla asked. No. Maya opened her eyes, meeting Layla's gaze. Don't you? Layla nodded slowly, reluctant acknowledgement crossing her features. The information is there when I need it. Like someone uploaded an instruction manual directly to my brain. Not someone, Maya corrected. Something. The sphere itself. Carlos leaned back in his chair, processing the implications. You're saying you can communicate with it? Control it? Not control. Interface. Maya struggled to find words for concepts that existed beyond human language. It's designed to recognize certain neural patterns, to distinguish between those seeking knowledge and those seeking weapons. And it recognized something in both of you, Anna concluded. That's why the connection formed so quickly. Your minds were compatible with its parameters. Maya thought of her years as a combat medic, trained to kill if necessary, but dedicated to healing. Layla had served in military intelligence, gathering information that saved lives as often as it ended them. Both warriors, but with purpose beyond destruction. We need Phantom, Maya said, another certainty emerging from the transformed pathways of her mind. He's connected to this too. The Mustang, Carlos looked dubious. How? I'm not sure yet, but he led me to the Outpost for a reason. To my grandfather's journal. He's part of whatever pattern is unfolding. A plan began to take shape, not fully formed, but guided by the new intuition that operated alongside Maya's military training in medical knowledge. They would need help, transportation, and a way to retrieve Phantom from the desert ranch. The solution came from an unexpected source. Carlos's secure email pinged with a message from Joe Begay, routed through multiple proxies to avoid detection. Government operation expanding. Elena questions both of you intensively. Believes you hold key to full activation. Phantom missing from paddock this morning. Appears to have jumped fence impossible for normal horse. Heading northeast based on tracks. Almost as if he's coming to find you. Contact at coordinates below if you need extraction. Time growing short. The message ended with GPS coordinates for a remote airstrip just outside Los Alamos and a time midnight tonight. Joe, Maya said with relief. He's still free, still helping us. And Phantom escaped on his own, Layla noted. Almost like he knows what's happening, Maya finished. Like he's part of the network too, in his own way. Anna looked between them, scientific skepticism warring with the evidence before her. You're suggesting the horse is, what? Influenced by the sphere as well? Animals have different neural architecture than humans, Carlos mused, warming to the theory. Maybe simpler patterns are easier for the technology to interface with. Less resistance, fewer preconceptions. Maya remembered Phantom's intelligent eyes, the way he'd led her unerringly to the hidden journal, his agitation near the underground chamber. Not simpler, different, operating on instinct and connection rather than logic and language. They spent the remaining hours preparing, gathering supplies, reviewing Miguel Rivera's notes, and mapping possible approaches to the outpost. Anna provided medical kits with treatments based on Maya's grandfather's records, designed to stabilize their condition if the symptoms worsened. By nightfall, they were ready. Carlos would remain behind as their contact, monitoring satellite feeds and providing remote support. Anna insisted on accompanying them, both as medical backup and because, as she put it, I've spent my career studying the brain-machine interface. I'm not missing humanity's first encounter with an alien intelligence. The drive to the airstrip was tense, everyone acutely aware that Elena's people might be tracking them. But the remote location remained clear, illuminated only by stars and a quarter moon as they arrived shortly before midnight. They waited in silence beside the empty runway, the mountains looming dark against the star-filled sky. Exactly at midnight, they heard it, the distinctive thrum of helicopter rotors approaching from the west. The aircraft appeared over the ridge, running without lights until the last moment. As it settled onto the runway, Maya recognized the same helicopter that had brought them to Los Alamos, Rodriguez at the controls. But it was the figure that emerged after the pilot that caused Maya's breath to catch. Joe Begay, leading a copper-colored Mustang with a white star on his forehead. Phantom, Maya whispered, moving forward as if drawn by an invisible thread. The Mustang broke free from Joe's loose hold, trotting directly to Maya with purpose in every stride. When he reached her, he pressed his muzzle against her shoulder, the same gesture of connection they'd shared before. He found us at the ranch last night, Joe explained, approaching with a look of wonder on his weathered face. Just appeared out of nowhere, like he knew exactly where to go. Maya ran her hand along Phantom's neck, feeling the strong pulse of life beneath his copper coat. He did know. Somehow he's connected to all of this, a different kind of receiver. Joe nodded, unsurprised. The old stories say animals can see beyond the veil, can perceive things humans miss in our blindness. He glanced at Layla and Anna. You've brought reinforcements, I see. Quick introductions were made as Rodriguez refueled the helicopter. Time was precious now, with government forces likely already aware of the aircraft's unauthorized flight. Elena has assembled a research team at the Outpost, Joe informed them as they prepared to board. Military personnel, scientists, even psychics trained in remote viewing. They're attempting to establish control protocols before the alignment completes. Can they succeed, Layla asked. Joe's expression grew grim. They believe they can, but your grandfather's note suggested otherwise. Forced interaction leads to rejection, sometimes violent. The failsafe, Maya murmured, is designed to protect itself from misuse. What about Phantom? Anna asked practically. We can't take a horse in the helicopter. We won't need to, Joe replied. There's a land route to the Outpost, old trails the border patrols used to use. I can guide him there. Meet you at the rendezvous point we discussed. Maya felt torn, reluctant to separate from Phantom again so soon after their reunion. The Mustang seemed to sense her hesitation, nudging her gently as if in reassurance. He'll be there, Joe promised. Some connections transcend physical distance. With time running short, they boarded the helicopter, Maya, Layla, and Anna in the passenger compartment, Rodriguez at the controls. As they lifted off, Maya watched Phantom and Joe grow smaller below, the copper Mustang's coat gleaming in the moonlight, till they disappeared into the shadow of the mountains. The flight to the rendezvous point took just over an hour, Rodriguez expertly navigating by moonlight to avoid detection. They set down in a narrow canyon about 3 miles from the outpost, close enough to approach on foot, far enough to evade immediate detection. 24-hour, Rodriguez told them as they unloaded their gear. Then I'm out of here, with or without you. Any longer and they'll have intercepted me. Understood, Layla confirmed, her military training evident in her precise movements and situational awareness. As Rodriguez lifted off again, the 3 women took stock of their position. The pre-dawn desert stretched around them, silent and ancient. Somewhere ahead lay the outpost, the chamber beneath it, and the forces gathering to control an encounter humanity was not prepared for. We should move, Anna suggested, checking the medical packs she carried. Reach our observation point before full daylight. They hiked through the rugged terrain, following the route Joe had mapped for them, a path that would keep them hidden from the surveillance systems likely deployed around the outpost. By sunrise, they had reached a rocky outcropping that offered a clear view of the activity below. The transformation of the abandoned outpost was stunning. What had been a quiet ruin days before was now a hive of activity. Temporary structures surrounded the original buildings. Military vehicles and scientific equipment filled the courtyard. A security perimeter with armed guards encircled the entire complex. Most concerning was the massive apparatus constructed over the ravine where the underground chamber lay. A complex framework of metal and machinery that reminded Maya of particle accelerator components. They're trying to amplify the signal, Layla whispered, observing through binoculars. Force the connection on their terms. Can they succeed? Anna asked. Maya accessed the knowledge flowing through her transformed neural pathways. No, but they can damage the network trying, possibly trigger defensive measures. Through the binoculars, they could make out Elena moving between structures, directing operations with the confidence of someone accustomed to command. Scientists in white lab coats hurried to follow her instructions, adjusting equipment and monitoring readings. The activation sequence is already beginning, Maya realized, feeling the medallion grow warmer against her skin. The alignment starts today, culminates tomorrow at dawn. So what's our play here? Layla asked, the tactical question bringing focus to their mission. We're 3 people against an entire government operation. Maya closed her eyes, allowing the new pathways in her mind to suggest possibilities. The answer came with surprising clarity. We don't fight them. We redirect them. Change the frequency of the interaction. How? Anna's scientific precision demanded specifics. The chamber responds to neural patterns. Right now, Elena's team is attempting to force a specific type of communication, focused on technology acquisition, defensive capabilities. We need to offer an alternative. A different conversation, Layla said slowly, understanding dawning in her eyes. Knowledge exchange rather than weapons exchange. Exactly. Maya looked toward the horizon where the sun was now fully visible. And we need Phantom to complete the circuit. As if summoned by her thoughts, a soft nickering came from behind them. They turned to find Joe and Phantom approaching along the hidden trail, the Mustang moving with the silent grace that belied his size. Right on time, Joe said with a slight smile. He led the way most of the night, knew exactly where to go. Phantom approached Maya, his intelligent eyes seeming to convey understanding beyond animal awareness. The connection between them had strengthened with each encounter, transcending ordinary human-animal bonds. Now we wait, Layla decided, setting up their observation post in the shadow of a large boulder. Monitor their activities. Look for an opening to approach the chamber. Throughout the day, they watched the operation below. Elena's team appeared to be experiencing difficulties. Equipment malfunctions, unexplained power fluctuations. Even from a distance, the frustration was evident in their body language and frantic movements. The sphere is resisting, Maya explained, intuitively understanding what was happening, rejecting forced protocols. By dusk, a new urgency had overtaken the operation. Floodlights illuminated the entire complex as activity intensified around the ravine machinery. Something was happening, something unplanned. Energy readings are spiking, Joe reported, monitoring a small device he'd brought with him. Whatever they're doing, it's accelerating the activation sequence. Through the binoculars, Maya could see Elena gesturing frantically, scientists rushing equipment toward the ravine. Armed personnel had moved closer to the center of activity, weapons ready. They're panicking, Layla observed, losing control. Maya felt it too, a surge in the information flowing through her transformed mind. Images and concepts flooding her consciousness faster than she could process. Beside her, Phantom grew restless, pawing at the ground and tossing his head. "It's time," she said, certainty filling her voice. "We need to go now, before they trigger the failsafe." Under cover of darkness and the chaos below, they made their approach, Maya and Layla taking the lead, Phantom following with uncanny silence, Joe and Anna providing rear support. They used the natural contours of the land for cover, avoiding the security perimeter by following dry washes and ravines. The closer they came to the outpost, the stronger the connection grew. Maya could feel the sphere's energy resonating with her transformed neural pathways, information flowing in a steady stream rather than chaotic bursts. Beside her, Layla experienced the same phenomenon, their minds becoming more efficient receivers with proximity. They reached the edge of the ravine undetected, benefiting from the confusion among Elena's team. From their position, they could see what had caused the panic. The metallic door to the underground chamber had reopened of its own accord, a blue glow emanating from within. The machinery Elena had installed to control the interaction was malfunctioning, components overheating and sparking. "They tried to force it," Joe whispered. "Now it's responding on its own terms." Personnel were being evacuated from the immediate area, scientists grabbing data storage devices as they fled. Only Elena remained near the chamber entrance, her face illuminated by the eerie blue light, expression locked in a mixture of fear and determination. "Now's our chance," Maya decided. While everyone's distracted, they moved quickly down the ravine path, Maya and Phantom in the lead. They had nearly reached the chamber entrance when Elena turned and spotted them. "Rivera," she called, recognition and something like relief crossing her features. "I should have known you'd come back." Maya stopped a safe distance away, Phantom half hidden behind her. "You need to shut this down, Elena. Your approach is triggering defensive measures." "Impossible." Elena gestured to the malfunctioning equipment. "We've established protocols, safeguards." "It doesn't work that way," Layla interrupted, joining Maya. "The sphere can't be controlled or weaponized. That's not its purpose." Elena's expression hardened. "You don't know its purpose. You've barely begun to understand what's happening to your own minds." "But we're learning," Maya replied, touching the medallion at her throat. "Because we're asking rather than demanding, receiving rather than taking." A tremor shook the ground beneath them, the blue glow from the chamber intensifying. Equipment toppled, sending Elena's remaining team members scrambling for safety. Only Elena stood her ground, the scientist in her unwilling to abandon the discovery of a lifetime. "The alignment is accelerating," Joe warned, checking his device. "Energy levels approaching critical threshold." Maya knew what needed to happen next, had known it since the visions began, though she'd only now accepted the truth. She moved forward, Phantom following as if they shared a single purpose. "What are you doing?" Elena demanded, backing toward the chamber entrance. "Completing the circuit," Maya answered simply. "Allowing the communication to happen as it was intended, between minds equipped to understand, not machines designed to control." She gestured for Layla to join them, forming a triangle, human, human, and animal. Their positions echoing the global triangle formed by the three spheres across Earth. "You can't," Elena protested, though her voice had lost its certainty. "The risks are necessary," Maya finished. "This isn't about your agency, Elena, or our government, or even humanity alone. It's about a conversation across stars that's been waiting millennia to continue. Another stronger tremor shook the ravine. The blue glow from the chamber pulsed in a distinct pattern, almost like a heartbeat. Maya felt the medallion grow hot against her skin, resonating with the energy emanating from below. "Last chance," she told Elena. "Join us or leave, but don't interfere." Something in Maya's transformed gaze must have reached Elena's scientific core, the part of her that had entered this field seeking knowledge rather than power. After a moment's hesitation, she stepped aside. Maya led Phantom and Layla into the chamber, the three of them moving as if guided by an unseen choreographer. The blue glow intensified around them, the symbols on the walls pulsing with internal light. In the center, the black sphere had changed. No longer absorbing all light, it now seemed to contain stars, pinpoints of brilliance visible within its depths, configurations shifting like constellations rearranging themselves. Acting on instinct, Maya placed one hand on the medallion and the other on Phantom's neck. Layla completed the circuit, connecting with both of them. The moment the link was formed, the chamber responded, the humming tone shifting to a harmonic that resonated not in their ears but directly in their minds. Information flowed through them, not as words or images, but as pure concept, understanding beyond language. The sphere's purpose clarified in Maya's transformed consciousness. Not a weapon or tool of conquest, but a teaching device, a repository of knowledge left by visitors who had found Earth millennia ago. They had seeded these communication nodes across the planet, designed to activate when humanity had reached sufficient technological advancement to receive their message without destroying themselves in the process. The networks had awakened prematurely in 1957, triggered by nuclear testing and the early space program, then gone dormant again when the response proved humanity wasn't ready. Now, with the proper celestial alignment and receivers whose neural patterns were compatible with the transmission method, the true exchange could begin. In those timeless moments within the chamber, Maya experienced glimpses of civilizations beyond imagining, species that had evolved along different paths, technologies based on principles humans had barely begun to conceptualize, philosophical understandings that transcended Earth's limited perspectives. And Pemoin, not conquest, not invasion, but invitation to join a conversation spanning galaxies, a community of intelligences sharing knowledge across the void. Phantom's presence completed something essential in the communication, his simpler yet profound consciousness providing a bridge between human abstraction and instinctual connection to life itself. The visitors had understood this need for balance, had designed their system to require both types of awareness. Outside the chamber, Joe and Anna watched in awe as the blue energy enveloped the three figures, forming a perfect hemisphere of light. Elena stood transfixed, her scientific mind struggling to process what her instruments could measure but not explain. Within the light, Maya, Layla, and Phantom existed simultaneously as themselves and as conduits for something greater. Their transformed neural pathways receiving, processing, and responding to a message encoded eons ago by beings who had looked at humanity's potential and decided to wait, to watch, to hope. When the light finally faded with the coming dawn, the three emerged changed once more. Not physically, but with a depth of understanding that would take lifetimes to fully process. The knowledge they now carried would transform human understanding of the cosmos, of consciousness itself, if shared properly and protected from those who would weaponize it. Elena approached cautiously, her scientific curiosity overcoming her agency training. What happened? What did you see? Maya exchanged glances with Layla, a silent communication passing between them. Not what we expected, she answered simply, but exactly what we needed. The signal? Elena pressed. The communication? Complete, Layla confirmed, but not in any form your instruments could record or your weapons researchers could use. Disappointment and frustration crossed Elena's face. Years of work, resources, planning, not wasted, Maya assured her. Just redirected. There's more to learn here than any weapon could provide. The question is whether your agency is interested in knowledge for its own sake. The rising sun cast long shadows across the ravine as they stood at this crossroads of human destiny. Behind them, the chamber had sealed itself once more. Not permanently, but until the next phase of communication could begin. The network had delivered its initial message. Now it waited for humanity's response. Joe approached carrying something in his weathered hands, a silver medallion identical to the one Maya wore, its surface etched with the same symbols. "Found this near the entrance," he explained, offering it to Layla. "Think it might be meant for you." As Layla accepted the medallion, placing it around her neck, Maya felt a sense of completion, a circuit now stable, balanced between them. Whatever came next, they would face it together, transformed but not lost, changed but still human. Phantom nudged Maya's shoulder, his intelligent eyes reflecting the sunrise. The copper Mustang had fulfilled his purpose as guide and bridge, yet their connection remained undiminished. Some bonds once formed transcended ordinary understanding. "What now?" Anna asked the question they all faced, standing amid the wreckage of Elena's failed attempt to control forces beyond human dominion. Maya looked toward the horizon, where the sun continued its ancient journey across the sky. Somewhere far beyond, across unimaginable distances, others were listening, waiting for humanity's next steps in a conversation millennia in the making. "Now," she said, her hand resting on Phantom's warm neck, "we learn how to answer.